Uzumaki. Blue eyes opened reluctantly. He stared at the screamer. Shido was his name, the man hated him. Another one among the many who shared the sentiment. Sorry, sensei, he said. The words were impassive and uncaring, something he wanted everyone to know. Be sorry when you become a hobo, Shido snarled at him. The teacher pushed his glasses back as he continued the charade. This is the third time you fell asleep this week. Disrupting the class with your blatant show of delinquency. Sleep when you're at home. I worked late last night, the blonde replied, his unkempt hair flickering as he ran his hand through them. He wasn't going to apologize a second time. He didn't say anything further. There was no need to. They didn't care about him, nor did anyone else. Well, a few did, but they were unique cases. No guardian, no parents, no relatives. It was funny to him. This whole situation. Naruto Uzumaki mused in his mind, laughing at his fate. The man who flipped off destiny on every turn, finally admitted defeat in its face. He could tell how his friends and family would react to him acting in this manner. His parents would probably frown at him. While his father would take a more meticulous approach, his mother would rip him a new one. Jiraiya and Tsunade would have done something, anything, to break him out of that state. His friends too, but they weren't around. None of them were. He was alone. The blonde understood what Sasuke meant that day. He knew why the Avenger sought solace in such a dangerous manner. Losing the people that meant the world to you was harsh. A part of you went with them, and now that Naruto wasn't with them any longer, self-loathing and isolation became tempting drugs. It was better this way. Naruto was a far cry from the person he used to be. Despite all that, he missed them. All of them. Sighing, he reluctantly grabbed his pen and started jotting down notes. He didn't need to think about them right now. He didn't want to hear Shido's obnoxious voice sneering at him, berating him, and so many other words that he chose to ignore. It irked him at the moment. The hushed whispers and gossips regarding him didn't help his case either. It only annoyed him further. Just a bit more, he thought. Then I can go home. If he didn't fall asleep a second time. Then again, lunchtime was up ahead. The school cafeteria was a place that he looked forward to visiting. That was something worth looking forward to. So, a beautiful redhead said. What have you picked up, Koneko? Pervert smells like a dragon, bucko. A bland, monotonous reply came from a petite, 15-year-old girl. Far too small and lithe for her age. It seems our hunch was right, the redhead said. Hope swelled in her. And what of the fallen? Is she still dating him? Yes, Koneko replied. He goes out with her nearly every day. The girl's answer was short, crisp and blunt. Just as usual. The deadpan tone, however, was something the redhead tried to change, and failed, every time. And you managed to put a flyer on him? She asked and saw the petite girl nodding as she ate pastry, whatever was left of it. Good. That'll be all, Koneko. Make sure to be here tomorrow. Orientation day? Yup. The redhead said and went back to observing the papers on her desk. She heard footfalls drifting away from her and a routinely, goodbye, bucko, from the girl. Naturally, she waved back with a smile on her face. Rias Gremory was nothing if not determined. She was her own person. A high-class devil. A young woman who wanted to control her own fate. A proud otaku, even if she liked to hide that little fact. An aspiring king who sought to move up in the young devils rankings in the rating games. As such, she would not let such an attempt slip away from her. For more reasons than one. Based on what she learned, Issei Hyodo, 16, socially awkward, and wildly unpopular, was a simple man. He saw boobs, he liked them. One-dimensional, a pervert, and above all, a person she could persuade with minimum effort. Having observed how the loving boy rarely received any form of affection from the opposite, she wasn't surprised when a fallen angel, a voluptuous female one at that, asked to be his girlfriend, and he, happily, accepted. At the very least, he could have suspected how a beautiful woman came out of the blue to be his significant other. He was naive, in a cute way. This also gave conformity to what the fallen was planning, which would probably take place tonight. Issei Hyodo was going to die tonight. Of that there was no doubt. Yes, he would be useful. Rias wasn't cruel. No, she was a Gremory, and when he did die tonight, she would make sure to bring him back to life. She would treat him like a friend, instead of a servant, just like all the other members of her peerage. Right now, however, she needed to manipulate the boy. For his power. To break free from the shackle known as Riser Phoenix. Under no circumstances would she marry that arrogant, horny, misogynistic pig. But first the paperwork in front of her would need to be carefully processed. Perhaps her brother pretended to be a childish man because of the madness that such large, menacing stacks of processed wood pulp brought. With a reluctant sigh of misery and annoyance, she began. Being a king is hard. She saw him every day. Well, each day he came to school, that is. Or, when she would have some free time and observe what the boy did every now and then. Nothing unusual. He was a normal person, the average human being. About as intriguing as the rest of the world's population, where nameless people with generic faces would bite the dust eventually and be forgotten to time. However, he was more interesting than he wanted let on. Always looking bored, or pulling off a performance that convinced the world in regards to his state of mind. She had her eyes on him ever since he joined 2 years ago. With each passing day, he slowly started to invade her mind, her thoughts, her dreams. He was always there. As for his social life, it was more or less the everyday routine with him. Barely talked to anyone, avoided people when they tried to speak at length with him even when they accidentally spoke to him. He always had excuses ready. His garden, his shop, his various pets, which included a fox, a raccoon, a cat, a turtle, a monkey, a beetle. Or the general indifference where he shrugged off condescending words, mere specks of dust on his clothes. Above all, he was determined to not mingle with people. To stay away from them. The bell rang and the daily drama took place. Actors played their roles like clockwork. Teachers reminding students of how important lessons were and leaving with scowls at their disregard. The students cheerily getting up from their seats, smiling and loquaciously moving out of the room. All of them, except him. He was asleep again. She had to wake him up. She was class representative after all, and she wanted to be the first thing he saw when he woke up. Slowly leaving her desk, she walked with a normal if not regal pace. The black-haired girl was glad there were no worshippers around at the moment. While she enjoyed the adulation and the praises to a certain extent, everyone had their limits. After a while, their words began to mean less and less, from the first year too. Nothing mildly interested her, except her friend's freedom, which she was still striving for. Until he appeared in her life. Naruto Uzumaki, the delinquent as everyone saw him. The hobo, as Shido called him. The future dropout as the students labeled him. But to her, he was so much more. Uzumaki-san, she chirped. Her voice, honey. Her smile, a gift for men. Class ended. You don't want to be left behind now, do you? She reached out her hand to wake him, gently, but stopped when she heard the reluctant groan. He got up drearily like a zombie from his grave. The blonde rubbed his forehead and stretched his neck. A yawn escaped his lips as he leaned back into the chair. Finally, she saw it. She saw them, those lifeless blue eyes, dark and dull and empty. The pain hidden so carefully beneath those darkened pupils. It made her shiver. It made her tingle. But most of all, it made her worried. For him. I see, she heard him say. A voice she knew was filled with apathy. He didn't even look at her as he stood up. Thanks, I guess. She wasn't surprised. He was always like that to her. It was only since the last 4 months she had to decrease her animated talks with him. She was perhaps one of the few who ever spoke with him length, and even after 2 years she knew so little about him. Orphaned, raised alone, somehow getting a scholarship, a lucky pick she assumed. Attractive, if he didn't have that look on his face. And always alone in that small bubble he made around himself. It didn't sit well with her. Loneliness was something she knew and the consequences that came with it. Uzumaki-san, she said, putting on her best smile. A full-blooded man would melt at the sight. But him? He was still finding the hallway more interesting as she faced his back. Still, she wasn't one to give up easily. Would you like to get lunch together sometime? No, he said immediately. She expected a slower response. Are you sure? The black-haired beauty was still hopeful. Yes. It seemed he was still stubborn as ever. Really sure? He walked away, not even bothering to spare her a glance. Akeno Himejima made a silent promise to herself. To not, even slightly, ignore him like that again. Things would undoubtedly change after tonight, for the better, she liked to think. Then she could begin her friendship anew with him. With Naruto Uzumaki. The world hated him. If not, at the very least, it had some sort of grind against him. It had to. Here he was sitting in the park, leaning against the tree and enjoying a good sandwich under the starry sky. Nature was at its finest. The pale moon glowed dimly and he finished his semi-dinner. He went on to smoke and enjoyed the slow, burning sensation of the tobacco. Despite what people said about cigarettes, it did serve its purpose. A momentary distraction that Naruto became accustomed to. Mentally, the blonde made plans to have some ice cream tonight. Kuo Town did have its fair share of perks along with its oddities. Yet, trouble tore through the lands, searched under every rock and shook every branch until it found him. Naruto knew this world, peaceful and ordinary as it seemed, was anything but that. There were no large conflicts going on. Warfare here sophisticated even if the humans were unimpressive. However, there weren't just humans in this world. Senjutsu helped him feel the presences of everything around Kuo Town. Animals, humans and 3 other signatures he couldn't recognize. One felt comforting and the second was confusing, almost as if it was at war against itself. Finally, last one felt heavier than the others. The second type were the ones he had seen and avoided. Out of fear? No. He didn't want attention from these crow-winged people. Then again he should have known better. When he was 9 he received an object out of the blue. Its existence and ability only confirmed his theory that this world was bizarre, and the object, somehow, concealed his presence. Regardless of all this, he went on with his life. It didn't concern him anyway. Will you die for me? Now, it was different. He saw how a couple entered the park. A bit younger than him perhaps. Then the girl asked that question, not the most romantic one either. She reeked of bloodlust, a quality he didn't want in his girlfriend should he ever become bound. He saw how the bewildered boy got stabbed in the shoulder with a pink something. Naruto didn't want to assume what it was, given the awkward shape the light-conjured weapon had. He could have saved the boy. It was that easy. An innocent would be spared from a meaningless death and he'd sleep with a clear conscience. The old him would have rushed at such a scene. Now, he didn't want to. The boy could have run away. He had several chances, yet he was busy looking at his dark-winged murderer. There was also the fact that Naruto let these crows kill people before. This situation, like the others, had nothing to do with him. So he began to walk away until, much to his shame, he stepped on a broken twig on the grassy ground. It echoed like a siren in the quiet park. Who's there? Naruto resisted the urge to sigh as he massaged his forehead. He heard a squelch, a croak, some choking and wings flapping. Soon enough the crow lady was in front of him. In his opinion, while the outfit was lusty and showed off her fantastic figure, it completely killed the mood. Whatever speck of seriousness that built up in him faded when he noted her appearance. Her bloodlust was paltry before. Now it was gone. He was honestly disappointed. Who are you, human? The woman asked. The sharp, pink weapon present in her hands. Just someone who really wants to be left alone. Well, isn't that a crying shame, she said. A horrendous smile formed on her face. For someone so young to fall into such a horrible predicament. Naruto didn't even bother to hold back the sigh. Some things never change. Please go away, he said, cutting her off. I really don't have time for this. Is that arrogance I hear? She sneered. It doesn't matter. In a few seconds, you'll be dead like that boy. That explains the smell, he replied, noticing the repugnant stench in the air. His plans to get some ice cream were completely ruined now. Don't worry, you'll be doing the same very soon. Before we start, Naruto told her, mind telling me what you are? Rainier, she replied. At least she had manners if not tact. Your personal angel of death. He had to close his eyes at that. Death. Was he afraid of death? He didn't know anymore. He'd seen its face so many times before. Did he want to die at the hands of a woman claiming to be an angel? She wasn't bad to look at, and dying in this prospect would be one hell of a way to go out. He knew someone who'd smile and give 2 thumbs up to her. At the very least he knew this much. This woman, crow, or angel as she liked to call herself, could never kill him. No matter how much she tried. Angel, huh? I think you're mistaken, Crow, he said, his blue eyes seeing how fury settled on her features. She seemed to have taken some offense to his wording. 1 point to you, Naruto. You dare mock my wings? You worthless atom spawn, she howled, and the boy opened his eyes, lunging towards him with the weapon, to gut him and leave him for dead. It was so slow. Naruto reached out and caught the weapon. Let's take this elsewhere. Rias Gremory heard his wish. His penultimate request before leaving this mortal realm. He wished to see a beautiful woman before he died. The heiress could grant this wish. Kneeling down in front of the boy, she let him drink in her appearance. There were worse ways to go out. She saw how his eyes became excited at her sinful figure, her chest particularly, and finally saw that light fade from his eyes. Issei Hyodo was dead and she brought her evil pieces forth. She would resurrect him. In turn he would gain a long life, strength, a peerage should he be worthy of it, but above all he'd help her in breaking the chains that bound her. Yes, everything was going according to plan. Chess pieces? Yes, fear gripped the Crimson Ruin Princess. The voice came from behind her. She had kept her senses up and should have heard footsteps or felt the appearance of a circle. Hesitantly, she turned around to see a blond young man standing in front of her. Cool cerulean eyes looked back at her greenish-blue ones. It was as if she were an ant under his boot. Above all, she felt very nervous now. "Go on then," he said. "They do what exactly?" Fear racked her nerves. An inhumane chill was present in the air, making Rias shiver from its frosty embrace. The light breeze wheezed as it died. Here she was alone, with a dead teen painting the ground with his blood and a stranger. From what Rias guessed, he was old as her, yet the young man's posture betrayed his age. His eyes bore no warmth. A face devoid of all emotions. An aura of death loomed around him. Dark, bleak, and suffocating. It was like he was luring her into a trap where only her doom awaited. She tried to muster courage. To speak up and show this human. He was human from what she could tell, that she, Rias Gremory, was not afraid. She'd fought stray devils, fallen angels, exorcists and foul beasts. Looked them dead in the eye before erasing their existence. Surely she could face him. Then as if feeding on her turmoil, she felt gravity weighing down on her. Her throat tightened, she suffocated. It tormented her, commanded her and instilled the fear of God within the descendant of Gremory and Baal. She failed. Her devilish heritage seemed as threatening as a child armed with a rubber duck. "The longer you take, the more time we'll waste," she heard him say. The sheer absence of emotions in his voice made her more nervous. "He's just human," she kept reminding herself. Distraction was a method to stave off fear. Her brother often told her so. If she could fight him, hit him with her power of destruction, then he would be no more. One shot, that's all she needed. But then she noticed a strange object in her enemy's hand. Metallic, sharp, black. A kunai. She hadn't seen it in his hand before, unless he let me see it. "This is starting to become troublesome," he said, and for a moment, the Gremory heiress swore she saw his lips slightly twitch. Like a ghost, it disappeared before the deadpan expression settled again. She'd seen that look before. She had definitely seen him before somewhere. It was after a while that her mind finally remembered who he was. How could she not recognize him? There was no one else with whisker-like marks on their cheeks. Naruto Uzumaki, the misanthropist, as so many called him. A person who minded his own business, spared his attention to no one and simply went about his days. Rumored to be connected to criminals due to some rumors about being seen with the police. Now aware of who stood before her, Rias started to form a plan. "You're Naruto Uzumaki, right?" she asked, mostly to calm herself down first and to delay whatever he was going to do. "Especially with that kunai. You're the Gremory girl," he said. The blank voice was disconcerting. He pointed a finger at her lap. "What were you about to do with that chess piece?" Ordinary humans should never be aware of the supernatural. Nor should the supernatural let humans know they exist. A fundamental agreement between the underworld, the Grigori and the heavenly host. Here she was, on the verge of gaining the key to her freedom, and the only obstacle in her path was a human. Her devil side advised her to be done with it and erase him. Yet a part of her did not want to. On top of that, this human unnerved her. He kept her on guard and his horrible eyes didn't move away from her. Not even for a second. She had only one clear choice. Rias would deal with the consequences later. "This will bring him back to life," she said. Perhaps appealing to this man's human nature would help. In the end, all humans liked to believe that deep down they were good. They always strived for something that helped them go on with a clear conscience. "You showing up moments after he died was too convenient," he said, crushing her hopes about him becoming a bit partial to her. "Who are you?" "I'm Rias. My bad. I asked the wrong question," he cut her off, his voice cold as harsh winds in winter. "What are you? I saw you coming out of a red circle with sigils. You're anything but human." "I'm a devil," she replied, hoping to divert his attention elsewhere. Instead he eyed her, as if he was reading her mind. Raping every shred of secrecy that she kept hidden from everyone. It made Rias deeply uncomfortable. Then the pressure increased. The fear kicked back in and ice ran in her veins. Her eyes widened in fear. A choking cough threatened to escape her throat before that feeling disappeared. All of it. It was as if she never felt threatened at all. Ria's breathing became normal and she found the blonde sigh. He then slowly turned around and began to walk away. She stared dumbfounded as he distanced more. Not a single word. Was this normal to him? She had been scared out of her wits a few moments ago. It was reminiscent of the tales she heard when the underworld had been torn apart by the Civil War. The feeling of death. Rias didn't know what it felt like until now. Hesitantly, she stood up and followed him. Rias didn't know why. Her mind was in a trance and his presence called out to her. Pulled her towards him. But rationality was still there. The heiress needed to sort this out. Wait, she said, hoping to use some of her magic and remove this memory from his mind. If that didn't work, since this human clearly had a sacred gear of some sort, or at the very least some magical reserves, she would have to keep the peace. Gremory, she heard him speak. It held no malice. There was no comfort in it either. What you do is your business. It doesn't concern me in any way. Don't bother me, or try to find me and I'll forget about meeting you here today. She couldn't even reply as the man exploded into smoke. Rias coughed, shocked at what happened. It was the first time she'd seen something like this. Thankfully, her mind was working properly, and she still had a future member of her peerage to resurrect. Naruto Uzumaki was something she would deal with later. Still, something needed to be done about him. He knew too much and… Wait, her eyes darted around. Where's the fallen angel? Rias had come here with plans to kill her. She was sure the woman would smile and gloat over Issei Hayadu's rotting, reeking corpse. Yet, she was not. But Uzumaki was here instead. First things first, she said, heading back to the corpse. Summoning her evil pieces, she placed 3 pawns upon his chest. She chanted the incantations of old, told him to rise from the dead and serve under her. They glowed, a circle formed before disappearing. She smiled widely when her attempt failed. She was right, had been all along. Placing all 8 pawns upon his chest, her heart skipped several beats when 2 of them began to glow a bright red shade. Rias Gremory was one step closer to freedom. Wrath, pride, envy. They were her sins. She fell because of them. How she envied the hairless apes the seraphs adored and loved. It was distasteful. With time, her wings darkened as her distaste towards Yahweh's greatest creation increased. On and on she let her vanity fuel her hatred until finally, her white wings became black. Again, she blamed the humans for her disgrace and chose to collect her debt. They were nothing more than pawns in her eyes. A flock waiting to be led by a shepherd. All of them, nothing more than flawed scum. And today, one of them battered her into the ground as if she were nothing more than a fly. The moment she lunged at him with her spear, he caught it with his bare hand and crushed it. Before she could gasp, he placed his hand over her mouth. The next thing Rainier knew, she was outside the skirts of Kuo town and was slammed against the cold surface. She was surprised and shocked at this human strength, but it was nothing compared to the way he looked at her. As if she were a pest. She wasn't such a lowly being. The former angel never was and never would be. Letting her wrath loose, she flew and decided to skewer the human with her spears. However, the man seemingly disappeared from her view. The fallen angel felt a violent tug at her wings. He had appeared above her and with one hand, twisted her right wing. She felt the pain, each of her nerves emphasizing the anguish he was putting her through. Then he grabbed hold of the other wing, proceeding to torture her more in midair before she crashed into the ground. Her face caked in mud, dirt and grass. Defiantly she rose once more, and he told her to stay down. Warned her that if she continued, he would break her. She refused the offer, spat on it and assured him that she, Rainier, would tear him apart. He simply replied that he would keep his word. It was her greatest mistake. Now, Rainier was broken, beaten, scarred. She couldn't even see him move. He was but a blur in her eyes as he kept disappearing and reappearing. Between each interval, she felt miniature explosions hit her. The human only hit her 9 times, but each of those blows felt as if Mjolnir was striking her down. They shattered her bones, tore her muscles from the inside and shredded her skin. Here she laid ruined, in a puddle of her blood and urine. She couldn't control herself when the pain became far too great. Her amethyst eyes looked up to see him standing near her, looking down on her. Perhaps he would end her now. I told you what would happen, he spoke with a slothful tone. He stretched his neck, looking away from her. I gave you a chance. But you didn't take it. Silently, she acknowledged those words. Her voice would come out as nothing but a whimper if she tried. Her throat was one of the places he had struck in the beginning. She saw how he reached for his back, and a small blade rested in his hand. He bent down to her level and looked at her. The fallen shook in fear. Something invisible choked her. Wind screamed in agony. The moon was hidden by blacker clouds. A shadow of darkness loomed over her. It told her how pointless her efforts would be against this man. No, this monster. The blade came down to her throat and she felt the cold metal press against her. It cut through her skin and some blood began to leak out. The damned feeling that was putting her into an abyss was not going away. Rainier looked at his eyes and prayed to Yahweh, to Michael, to the Holy Spirit. She saw her own death in those eyes. I should kill you, the blonde said. His hand reached around the back of her head, taking a fistful of her hair and lifted her face up to meet his. The blade was still there, and Rainier knew her time was at hand. Until the hopeless feeling disappeared when he threw her back into the ground. Once more, the fallen angel found herself surprised at this human. She was sure he would end her now. After thoroughly ruining her in battle, this was the only conclusion she could draw. An eye for an eye. The one true rule of the world. But then, his voice broke her out of her stupor. He stood over her. That would be something you probably do. Distasteful I find you. You're not worth the effort. Hardly someone I need to kill. Rainier felt worse now. To be called worthless, it was her greatest fear. It was why she joined Kokebiel's troop in the first place. To prove she wasn't just another foot soldier in the Grigori. The rogue cadre had promised her power and she took his hand without a second thought. However, there is something I want to tell you, Crow, he said, not even bothering to look at her. His gaze was fixed upon the night sky, a wistful look on his face. Don't cross my path again. I don't feel like killing anyone. I simply want to be left alone. Should you come after me, hoping to get some pitiful revenge, rest assured of one thing. She gulped, unrest built up at his hanging words. I will end your existence, Rainier. Another promise, one that he would carry out. Her wrath quivered under his cold eyes. Her pride was crushed by his bare hands. Her envy humbled by his words. Do you understand? He asked. Rainier nodded lightly as she laid there. He disappeared as the winds picked up. And for the first time in a century, maybe more, Rainier began to cry. Silently, she sobbed at her state. Her pain. Her utter humiliation. Akeno felt amazing since she woke up. She hadn't felt this bright since she was taken in by Rias. As if something she deeply desired had happened. On second thought, perhaps it was because that her king finally obtained the aid of a Longinus wielder that made her feel ecstatic. It was likely that, regardless, she had gotten up quite early. Last night, Rias had sent her a short, but meaty text message that made her go to bed early. 8 pawn pieces, she thought with a smile on her face. He was strong, the young pervert of Kuo. It seemed Rias' assumption held merit after all. She was also thankful to the other owner of Kuo town, Sona Sitri, didn't take the boy into her peerage. The Sitri was a friend of Rias since childhood and understood her plight. Akeno made a mental notes to somehow make it up to her. And now, here she stood near a ramen store that opened up roughly 5 years ago, but hardly caught her attention until the first year of senior high. Uniform on, with a few adjustments that she and a few others had due to exceptional perks, Akeno Himejima looked nothing less than an angel carved by the very hands of God. She ignored the looks sent her way as she stood by the 2-storied building. There was a ramen shop below and a modest apartment above. A stairway outside led up to it. While not overly large or famous throughout the country of Japan, Ichiraku's had a rustic feel to it. Homely, if she was to put it. A certain warmth that the small food store represented and a place she visited quite often. Mostly since last year, though she couldn't say the same thing for the last 4 months. Her occupation as Rias Queen required her to go to the underworld for reports, requests and missions the peerage got. Stray devils were turning up more nowadays. An exam needed to be taken after young devils received their evil pieces. Then, one of the 3 members of Kuo's pervert trio showed signs of having a sacred gear came up. A powerful one no less. It was a mess really. The whole damned affair all because one lust-driven devil couldn't simply cancel a contracted marriage. Akeno's musings were swatted away as she heard the sound of a door closing. Footfalls echoed in the small area as a young man walked down the staircase. Soon enough, Naruto Uzumaki stood in front of her. His hair had grown larger. Now it was past his shoulders. Not that he looked bad with long spiky locks, but the look didn't help his reputation one bit. Delinquent, misanthropist, foreigner, creep and so many other things they called him. He ignored all of that, again amusing her. Not all humans, teenagers no less, could simply shrug off the comments, the slants and the misgivings people said about him in earshot. Yet, surprisingly he never failed his exams. A minimal effort was all he gave, but he got through. Always hanging by the skin off his teeth and openly defying their opinions of him. Perhaps he was an unorthodox genius. Those sort of people had their own unique flaws in addition to their quirks. "Good morning, Uzumaki-san," Akeno said, smiling and looking at him daintily. He stared back intently, completely focused on her. She felt a bit flustered. This was maybe the longest the blonde looked at her. Akeno couldn't help but get lost in the deep, twisted blue of his eyes. She almost shook at the sight of it. Her sadistic side whispered her to take him. But that's not all that made her became infatuated with him. Naruto Uzumaki, human though he was, made her feel something. Something she couldn't quite place. After what seemed like an eternity to the black-haired queen, he finally spoke. "What are you doing here?" "I simply came to greet you, Uzumaki-san." "No," he paused, "you didn't." Well, she couldn't very well lie to him all the time. My, she said, giggling. Putting a hand on her cheek, her eyes lidded and a smile formed. Akeno tilted her head as she continued. "You seem to have caught on to my intentions, Uzumaki-san." He said nothing, and Akeno knew he was waiting for an answer. Since last year, she understood some of his quirks. This silence he let out now meant he was waiting for an honest answer. Shido-sensei hated him for this. Then again, Shido hated Naruto Uzumaki for reasons nobody knew. The blonde himself didn't mind openly disrespecting the man. "I simply wanted to walk to school with you," Akeno told him. After a few moments he looked away from her. Naruto started walking and the queen followed suit. It would be some time before they reached the school, so she let the silence reign for now. Akeno noted how some of the people, and the occasional Kuo students, stared at them. Gawked at them. A few even expressed their shocks, quite loudly if she was to put it. She didn't care. Let them have their own thoughts. Akeno was enjoying this small moment far too much. "So, Uzumaki-san," she began. "Have you made any plans?" "After finishing high school, of course. This is our last year." She saw the blonde look at her with a raised eyebrow. While he was still retaining the blank look he was known for, the evident confusion was genuine. "You're not going to ask me if I'll get my shit in line?" Akeno couldn't help but laugh at his crude answer. In all honesty, she expected it. He was a bit of a cynic, something she learned from her past interactions with the loner. This was not out of character for him. "No, why would I ask that?" "Because everyone else does," he stated the obvious for her. But that wasn't the way she saw it. "No, I have faith in you, Uzumaki-san," Akeno said. "You may not look like it, but you do pass the exams every year. A bit slightly average, but you never give up." He closed his eyes for a moment as they walked. If it was possible, Akeno swore his eyes looked darker now. "What are you really here for?" Naruto asked after a pregnant pause settled in. His voice seemed a bit stern to her. "I told you," Akeno replied. "I came to walk to school with you." "Again, what for?" "You're not gaining anything from it," he said. His voice seemed curious. "Well, that's not entirely true," she said, a playful smile formed. "I am gaining something. I'm going to regret this," she heard him say as he stopped, staring into her eyes. More precisely, he was gazing into her soul. It was surreal. Her breaths became shallow. The heart skipped a bit, hammering against her chest. Cheeks flushed red, unable to hide the blood rushing to her face. The act ravaged her mind over how he could do this to her merely by looking at her. "What exactly are you getting from this?" he asked. She recovered herself and focused on his words. Sometimes, the truth was better than a lie and Akeno Himejima didn't have any intention of lying to him. Why should she? Drawing a breath, she spoke as her violet eyes stared deep into his blue ones. "Because," Akeno said, "I like spending time with you, Uzumaki-san." Instead of walking away like usual, he stood there, glued to her words. Neither of them moved or looked anywhere else. Until finally, he spoke once more. "You," he said, drawing out a pause. "You're going to start bothering me again, aren't you?" Akeno laughed again. Melodic in nature, her elegant, silky voice made every passerby stop to simply see her radiance. Finally she ceased and looked at the man's back. She learned another thing today. Naruto Uzumaki said the most unpredictable things. Am I that overbearing? Yes, he walked along with her. Well, it's a burden you'll have to bear. I wish you wouldn't bother me, woman. That's not happening, unless you live in your own world. I do. Unfortunately, I have to share it with you. The fact that he said it in such a bland and obvious way made her want to write these things down. Naruto Uzumaki had a strange way of seeing things. You know, Akeno said after some time. Her eyes fixed on the clear sky. I'm surprised you didn't run away this time. I don't run away, he said. I just don't like talking with people. That's sad, Uzumaki-san, Akeno added with a bit of seriousness. She smiled nonetheless. Not talking with people, being alone, it's never a good thing. It is for me, he said, sagely. Then I'll simply have to change that. Change what? Well, for starters, making sure you talk to someone, she said. And then you finally getting some friends. And by someone, you're referring to yourself, he pointed out. You know me too well, Uzumaki-san, Akeno tilted her head. Perhaps I'll get to know more about too. No need to, Naruto replied. There's nothing interesting or good about me. I'll be the judge of that, Akeno replied, defiantly. Did he think he could brush her off? No, she would punish him regarding this later. But for now, she needed to tell him something. Something she thought about him, but never had the chance to say it to him. You are interesting, Naruto Uzumaki, she said. And you are a good person, otherwise you wouldn't have fed those homeless people at the park. Have you been stalking me? I prefer the term, observing. School's here, he said, and Akeno realized just how much distance they had covered. The stares, the surprised shouts, revolts and curses flying around was something she expected. Before long, Naruto was walking ahead. See you for lunch, Naruto-kun, he stopped hearing her words. Kun, he asked. She nodded her head. Since when did it become, Naruto-kun? Since now. Calling you, Uzumaki-san, was becoming too formal for me, Akeno replied. Besides, we're way past that point, Naruto-kun. After all, we're friends. Aren't we? She expected an answer. After their small walk and conversation together, Akeno didn't expect him to strafe away. One day she would get to him. She then headed towards the direction of the occult research club in the old building. First she needed to visit Rias and congratulate her. Their peerage had, after all, gained a new member. Opening the door, she found Rias sitting at her desk. A worried frown marred the features of her king. Her friend and Akeno spoke up. Is something wrong, Rias? She asked. The redhead looked at her, nervously. Akeno, Rias said before pausing, how do you know Naruto Uzumaki? With those simple words, Akeno Himejima felt a pit forming in her stomach. He couldn't in class today. Despite his attempts, he failed at such a simple task. His mind was fogged, obscured with thoughts he couldn't shove away. Last night, he fought an angel. Saw the Gremory girl claiming to be a devil. Recognizing the heavy signature he sensed, and stated she would bring the dead boy back to life. Which she did, as he saw the boy running around in the building today. The brown-haired teen looked healthy as a horse. In fact, Naruto could feel his energy. It was similar to the redheads, but there was something else. Something he couldn't quite place. That wasn't a major concern. He died, he came back, and it was, frankly speaking, not worth a damn. Everybody won, as long as they would leave him alone. The only thing bothering his mind was a girl. Akeno Himejima. That woman was troublesome. Shikamaru's tick couldn't describe her better. The Oni-sama started to talk to him since last year, one of few who ever did. Always striding forward with a smile on her face, the black-haired beauty seemed enamored with him. Akeno would talk to him at least once a day, and Naruto would give the necessary amount of answers. Nothing more, nothing less. 4 months ago, that had stopped. Naruto was internally grateful to God, or whoever was up there, for this divine intervention. Despite staying alone, old habits were never easy to kill. No matter how much time passed, he was still himself. Naruto Uzumaki, the man determined not to make the same mistakes he made before. Then came Akeno Himejima, clobbering him with conversations. This morning, when she appeared, waiting near his house, he became surprised. Though he didn't show it. His sensei, the copy ninja, would have been proud. Her presence was similar to the Gremory girl. It was also similar to Reinare's and, lastly, it felt human too. Before today morning, he noticed there was something unique about Akeno, but never took note to sense her life force. She always did seem a bit perfect to him. Far too beautiful to be human. Last night's events made him raise his guard a little. So, he kept his sensory perception activated. The night went peacefully, but this morning someone was outside his house. Just waiting there, hoping to face an enemy. Shock hit him when Akeno of all people turned out to be that person. Just like with everyone else, he kept her at arm's length and looked for lies, deception, false notions under her words. He found none. The woman meant him no harm. However, it wasn't the fact that she was a devil, or a fallen angel that bothered him. No, it was the fact that she cared about him. When he was reborn, the first thing he was a door. The door of an orphanage. He was a baby then. Naked as the day he was born. It wasn't easy, growing up all over again. A few perks included no large populace hating his existence. He grew normally as he could. However, he was still truly alone, and over the years, the blonde came to enjoy the isolation. So when a girl, a beautiful one no less, was interested in him and went out of her way to meet with him, talk to him and tell him he was a good person, it got to him. By God, it did. Much more than he thought he would. She stalked him from time to time too. His profession gave him away. Years ago, he opened up a ramen shop, mostly as a means to earn after certain events took place. One day, a large group of policemen entered his shop to eat. After learning of his orphan status, they forced him to go to Kuo Academy. They even made a petition to see that he would receive a scholarship should he pass. If he didn't, he'd be placed in a system where someone would look after him. Naruto didn't want that, so he took the exam, cheated in it as well, and studied here free of cost. He would finish high school and then do something with his life. The policeman's genuine act of kindness and large tips were the only reasons he let them go. After that, everything was still going well. Then, Akeno barged into his life. Naruto thought he finally won when she left him alone for the last 4 months. It was just a delay. And now, he sat with a dilemma. Lunchtime had come and gone before he found himself in the last class of the day. Naruto knew why he found today a bit more bearable than usual. Akeno Himejima, the damned woman, she called him a friend. He didn't want to be friends with anyone for that matter. That feeling of being close to other people, where a sense of conformity and caring about other people settled in. Where he would stake his own life for the sake of others. How he would worry about them later. No, it was better to not have them at all. After all, it was a proven theory. People close to Naruto Uzumaki died all the time. It was his curse. He didn't want the lives of more people on his conscience. Naruto couldn't believe himself at the moment. To be slightly affected by simple act of kindness from her, who just wanted to be friends with him. No, he said in his mind. I don't need anyone. I've done it before. I can do it again. He had his own demons. They were his to bear. Letting people get in his life would only complicate things. Naruto Uzumaki and Akeno Himejima. Please report to the student council room. The voice blared throughout the school's comms system, and everyone in their classrooms stared at him. Mostly at him, as his name was mentioned alongside one of the school's idols. Groaning, he got up and didn't bother waiting for Akeno. He had ignored her for the entire day since entering the classroom. Opening the door, he walked forward, and much to his inner ire, Akeno had caught up with him. She was faster than he gave her credit for. Akeno's face didn't have that smile anymore. The one he saw this morning and countless of other times. She looked better with it. Do you know why they called me? He asked. She didn't reply. Are all of you going to kill me? Again, silence was the only answer he received. Soon enough, he was standing outside the student council room with Akeno. He placed his hand on the knob, getting ready to twist it and enter the room. It was then his black-haired classmate spoke up. I won't let anything happen to you. A few simple words. That's all it was. He closed his eyes, shutting them tightly. Stubborn woman. You don't need to concern yourself, he told her. He meant those words for himself as well. The blonde was getting soft. You don't know me that well. Leave it at just that. I want to know you, Naruto-kun. Naruto Uzumaki once craved for such words. For such interest. It was a drive that shaped him into becoming the person he was known for. Now he hated and despised it. To have someone comfort you, to have someone reassure you that they would be there for him. It made him feel afraid. What do you mean, Rias? Exactly what I said. He's dangerous. The Gremory heiress clenched her fists. Simply thinking about the blonde unnerved her. Stay away from him. After the meeting with Sona, we'll decide what to do about him. Excuse me? Akeno gawked at her and the red-haired teen was taken aback. She had known Akeno for the last 8 years of her life. Ever since she found the raven-haired girl all by herself, running away from the Himejima clan for her life, her queen and best friend, became a lifeline for her. No, Akeno was more precious to her than that. Rias didn't have a sister, but Akeno easily took that role. She was damaged from a young age and kept up a teasing personality to hide her pain. Over time, Akeno did become a tease in general and some of her scars healed. But this was the first time that Rias' friend had snapped at her. This only piqued her interests and worries further. Naruto Uzumaki was no one. He was a bloody nobody, but in a single interaction proved how dangerous he was. The Gremory heiress couldn't forget his aura. Yet, this man had somehow caught Akeno's attention. How? When? Why? These thoughts invaded her mind. Before she could delve further, Akeno's words flinched her back to reality. We'll decide what to do about him, the sadistic queen repeated. Worry, fear and rage evident on her face. He's not something you can just get rid of. Leave him alone. Rias could not do that under any circumstance. An anomaly, that's what Naruto Uzumaki was. A dangerous anomaly. Akeno, her tone softer. Try to understand. He knows I'm a devil. Naruto saw Issei die and questioned me about it. And you answered him? What took you over? It was him, damn it. The Gremory heiress yelled in frustration. I don't know what exactly he did, but I believe he has a sacred gear. There's no other explanation. I didn't even notice him standing behind me until he spoke up. Then there was that murderous feeling he was letting out. Rias, her queen, came forward and held her hands with her own. Just hear me out, please. It was an action both of them had done for years. Her queen was stronger than her mentally, given how she grew up. Akeno was no doubt one of the pillars of support that was there since she grew up. She would listen. Rias had a soft side for people close to her, and this was Akeno of all people. What happened? The raven-haired girl asked. Both of them sat on the couch as the Gremory heiress let out a sigh. She began her tale anew, more calmly this time. She told her queen everything that happened. From her waiting for Issei to die, her first attempt to resurrect him and meeting the blonde. Rias spared no detail and saw Akeno become confused at last night's events. She noticed how a conflict danced in Akeno's eyes. The genuine amount of frustration that the reborn devil was going through. It didn't make the crimson-haired ruined princess feel better though. It only made her feel worse. To think her friend was somehow involved with Naruto Uzumaki. Does he know about me? Akeno asked after sitting in silence. I didn't tell him anything else other than the fact that I'm a devil and I was going to resurrect Issei, Rias said. He barely spoke and told me not to bother him. But I can't let someone like him roam around. I'm going to contact my brother and… Please don't, the redhead heard. Akeno's violet eyes that always twinkled with excitement, allure and a shining gleam were gone. Instead they seemed like dark amethysts slowly being drowned. Akeno, she said, just what is he to you? How do you even know him? I know him since our first year at high school, Akeno regaled. At first I thought he just didn't like people. Then I slowly began to notice something else. He was an orphan, he had no one and lived by himself in a house while maintaining a small ramen store. The queen paused a bit. Rias motioned for her to continue. The heiress was finding this to be far more interesting than she thought. So I sometimes followed him. Rias noted how her queen's cheeks became a bit flushed, out of embarrassment. I found out he talked with no one. He met no one and sometimes disappeared for days. I didn't even realize that observing him became a daily thing for me. Then, I started talking to him from last year. Her queen let out a sigh. He's not the most social person in the world. Even by Gasper's awkward standards. No one can be that bad, Rias replied. Though after her conversation with the blonde, she didn't dismiss that thought. The first time I said, hello, he said, go away. A fond smile settled on her queen's face. After that I kept talking to him each day. I even tried helping him with his studies, but he didn't need it. You'd think he would be a bad student considering how lax he is during classes. It could be a sacred gear, Rias reasoned. It did seem possible, and seeing the hybrid shrug her head. She waited for Akeno to finish. It mostly involved me talking, but over time he began to talk back. Sure, they were short answers, but he did give in. I felt like I finally got somewhere with him, her queen said. A small frown formed. Then 4 months ago, I didn't get that many chances to talk to him cause of duties, the Phoenix thing and training. Rias fiddled a bit. It was clear that Akeno was interested in this teen. A part of her felt guilty for taking away her queen's chances at talking to the boy. I talked a bit with him yesterday, but not as much as I wanted to. So when I got up early, I went to his house, Akeno explained. I waited for him and we walked to school together. I even said I'd see him for lunch. Akeno, Rias said, not sure how she felt about this. Granted, there was not much interaction from the cold-hearted and steel-tongued blonde, but her queen seemed so enamored with him. I want you to promise me something, Rias, Akeno said. My king, this never happened before. Akeno never, ever, called her by her title before. Please, don't harm him, she asked. Or was she begging? I'm sure he's not going to cause you problems. As long as we stay out of his way. I'll even stop talking with him, but please don't let anything happen to him. Akeno, Rias asked, clearly surprised at the black-haired girl's words. I just don't understand. What is Naruto Uzumaki to you? I don't know, she replied, her tone lost. With a wistful expression she spoke again. I don't know what he is. But for the life of me, I can't get him out of my head. This is confusing. I know, she replied. I can't explain it myself. But I want you to promise me, you'll do nothing. I'll try, but Sona needs to know about him as well, Rias added. She is the other king and half of this territory is hers after all, she has a right to know. I owe her that much. Fine, Akeno said, but I just want you to know. If anything happens, if tempers fly and her peerage attack Naruto-kun, I will protect him. And in that moment, Rias Gremory realized something. Her friend Akeno Himejima wasn't just interested in Naruto Uzumaki. No. Lots of boys and men often tried to court Akeno or at the very least tried to sleep with her. She couldn't blame them, and Rias herself was jealous of some of her queen's features. But Akeno going out of her way, to risk her loyalty to the underworld and fighting against the Sea-Tree heiress for the sake of one human? Her best friend was falling in love, strange as the notion seemed. Rias herself never knew what it felt like, but it seemed to match with what her mother often used to say. To be in love was to place others above you and risk your life. All of it, for the sake of seeing your significant other safe and happy. A tiny part of Rias couldn't help but feel jealous at how her friend found love. Naruto felt like a lab rat under everyone's gazes. As if he was a nine-eyed, six-headed, three-winged freak show everyone wanted to see. The student council president along with her merry band were there. Infusing his chakra, he sensed everyone in the room was a devil. He blamed himself for being this naive. He'd seen the fallen angels before, felt strange presences in Kuo before he got admitted here. Yet, he chose to lead a normal life. Be a normal person. Perhaps one of those strong presences he felt would end him or ignore him as a worthless one. Then he could die like a normal boring human who had no ulterior purpose. As usual, his luck decided to fuck him over instead. Naruto looked at the clock. More time passed than he thought. They finished explaining about how they were devils and apparently owned Kuo town. He'd made some small talk too. It was amusing in a sense. These devils just handed him all the information he needed to know without saying much. At least his luck was still a double-edged sword. Both Gremory and Shitori, Sea-Tree as Sona later clarified, began to explain how much of an anomalous danger he represented. The three factions, the supernatural. He absorbed the information while feigning disinterest. A part of him did block out more than a few words. Uzumaki-san, the president began. I think I speak for all of us when I ask you, what are you? There it was. He was honestly tired of sitting around and doing nothing. At least someone here is getting straight to the point. A human, Naruto replied. You might find 7 billion more like me on the planet. I didn't feel your presence, the Gremory girl accused him. She looked uneasy. All of them did, but none as much as her. Akeno looked nervous as she sat beside him. You should have paid more attention. Uzumaki-san, while there is no doubt you are human, the president spoke up, adjusting her glasses. It doesn't change the fact you're anything but an ordinary human. You're right, he said, deciding to play along. I'm just a bit more skilled than most humans. I'm pretty sure there are others who are like me. There most certainly are, the bespectacled teen replied. He wasn't surprised. In a world filled with angels, devils and fallen angels, some strong humans were bound to appear. It made more sense than anything. Especially when he considered a certain item he had. Survival of the fittest was still the name of the game. If that's all, I'll leave, Naruto said. He had a shop to run after all. That's not all, Uzumaki-san. Sona spoke up again and the blonde waited. How do we know you won't go against us? That you're not a spy working against us? If that turns out to be true, you're more than welcome to kill me, he replied. Despite their surprised looks, he continued. I'll tell you what I told Rias Gremory over there. Don't bother me, do whatever it is you devils do and leave me alone. He got up as Akeno stared at him. Naruto didn't want her to look at him like that. He didn't want anyone looking at him like that. One last thing, Uzumaki-san. Rias spoke up this time. What exactly are you capable of? Would you rephrase that? I meant your abilities, your powers so to speak, she asked. Power. In the end it was always about that cursed strength everyone wanted to attain. There was a time he craved for it. After seeing what power could do, he began to despise it. My powers are something you shouldn't concern yourself with. I'm nothing too special. A word of advice Uzumaki-san, Sona said, power comes at a price. No matter how uninvolved you want to remain, something will always catch up to you. It wasn't a threat, he could understand what she meant. A simple warning to be careful and he was now, much to his dismay, a part of this biblical supernatural hillbilly world. That idea of leaving Kuo didn't hold so much merit anymore. It was like a shackle now. A prison built to confine him here, and if he did disappear, someone would no doubt come searching for him. Do you wield a sacred gear, Uzumaki-san? Sona asked, continuing her questions. Does it matter? He replied. He was sure that he didn't have one. The item he possessed was much more different than what they defined. Fallen angels and other supernatural beings often tend to be attracted to sacred gear users, she explained. A few people in this room wield them. Good for them. But in regards to your question, no. I don't have a gear, he said. Seeing the look of satisfaction on the president's face and the worry now gone from Ria's face, he took it as a cue to leave. He had talked with enough people today. What happened to the fallen angel? Akeno asked him. She left, he replied. After I convinced her to. Did you fight her? Akeno asked a bit too loudly, a bit too nervously. No, it wasn't a fight. So, she didn't harm you or threaten you. He was getting tired of all these questions. Especially the ones she was asking. No, that's good, she sighed. He was finally out of that suffocating room. Naruto Uzumaki didn't care what happened to him at this point. He was a selfish bastard now and he would remain that way. The more people stayed away from him the better. They didn't need to be a part of his life. Akeno couldn't get rid of the nagging feeling eating away at her. Today's events endlessly replayed in her mind. After the meeting, the day went as normal as it could. Issei Hyodo was officially recruited into the occult research club, after he was attacked by a fallen angel. Again, the filthy creature, Donasek he claimed his name was, seemed enraged as he attempted to attack Issei even with the presence of both her and Rias. It was unsettling really. Usually, they would flee at the sight of them. Getting into a conflict with them would effectively break the status quo. The fedora-wearing man relented after both she and her king flared their power, something he couldn't match. After that, Issei was taken to the orc room and explained who he was. While the boy was shocked at the fact he was a devil reborn, he did overcome it after learning the perks of being one. Akeno had to stifle a laughter after he thought his crotch was his sacred gear and his dream of course. In any other circumstances, she would have found these traits to be cute. Something she would mess with him about later. Well, she did note how he couldn't keep his eyes away from her chest. She didn't blame him. It wasn't the first time someone looked at her like that. And maybe, there was a chance that she would tease him about it. But now her thoughts were dominantly occupied by someone else. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a normal human being. Granted he wasn't normal by human standards, but to have abilities how Rias described it surprised her in every way. Was that why she felt an urge to talk with him? The daughter of Shuri Himejima concluded that wasn't it. Far from it, Naruto being powerful or not had nothing to do with it. This didn't change anything. He was still Naruto Uzumaki to her. A loner, a young man who was absorbed in his own miserable world. Something she now wondered deeply about. Did something happen to him? She did notice how he was quiet after Sona told him how sacred gear users were targeted by many people. He could have lied about him not having one. He could simply be a talented mage like many other humans. It didn't sat her curiosity or worries though. She cared about Naruto Uzumaki. Much more than she thought she did. Something took her over during her talk with Rias, and she even begged her king to not let anything to happen to Naruto. What was he to her? She needed answers. Seeing as how Rias was away and she didn't have anything to do, Akeno walked out of Kuo Academy after arranging everything in order. One way or another, Akeno Himejima would find out what made Naruto Uzumaki who he was and why chose to isolate himself. To bury himself in solitude. Naruto took the roll of bills from his last customer of the day. The man attempted some joyful small talk and Naruto tried to be as courteous as he could. Money didn't grow on trees after all. Unsurprisingly, the man had bought a lot of ramen from him. The portly man had a foolish smile on his face as he ranted on about how his family would enjoy this too. Naruto never thought himself a good cook, even after those 3 years with Jiraiya. Here, however, getting the right amount of ingredients were easy and he didn't have to glance over his shoulders for impending danger. With practice, time, and shadow clones, Naruto perfected his art of cooking ramen among other skills. It helped his mind. Music aided too, along with a few other hobbies of his. Closing the shop and locking up the gates, he made his way up the stairs and entered his apartment. It wasn't that large. The deal he got back then was a fair one and was more than content with it. Finishing his own bowl of ramen, his small snack before dinner, and checking his equipment, Naruto mentally prepared to head out. He needed to place some seals outside his house. The blonde was never a master of the art back then. Jiraiya's nagging insistence on him learning it made him reluctantly use some of it. A lesson he was grateful for as it helped him now. Before he could start, his senses picked up someone's presence outside his door. He knew who it was. A whole year she had talked with him. Tried to reach out to him. What did he do in return? Avoided her, ignored her as much as he could, tried to forget that someone cared enough to give a damn about him. Hearing the knock, the blonde contemplated on what to do. He could walk away. Naruto-kun. The concern in her voice was genuine. Why can't you just leave me alone? She knocked again. Are you there? I need to talk to you. Go away, the blonde said in his mind. Go bother someone else. Someone who cares about you. Please. It was hard to ignore the plea. Just get it over with. Walking forward, he decided to talk to her. He explicitly stated to Sona and Rias to not bother him, but this didn't feel like their machinations. This was just the same girl who bothered her. He opened the door and saw her standing there. Her hair was let down, it was longer than he thought it was. Instead of the usual school dress he saw her in, Akeno Himejima stood in front of him in simple red shirt and black pants. Even then, she looked so elegant. He would give her that. What do you want? He asked. I wanted to talk to you, she replied, a small smile rested on her face. Her violet eyes filled with warmth. Did Rias send you? No, she said, squinting a bit. She doesn't know I'm here. I thought I told all of you to leave me alone. His voice was stern. Maybe she would go away if he was rude. Just like he usually was, only this time specifically at her. He could be harsh when he wanted to. I refuse. The woman was more stubborn than he gave her credit for. Leave, Naruto said. There's no need for you to concern yourself with me. You don't seem to understand, Naruto-kun, Akeno replied. The knowing feeling rose again. Exactly what don't I understand? That I care. She all but yelled. His younger self would feel horrible at how distraught she looked. The current him, not so much. He experienced something more wrenching than this. It haunted him every night, reminding him with flawless details that painted the terrible portrait he hated. What she chose to do was her decision. Still, this was going on in front of his apartment. Naruto really didn't want any more unwanted attention than he was receiving. Why do you care? He asked. His curiosity beckoned him to ask. What did he mean to the woman? What could someone like him possibly be to her? Because, she said, defiantly with a fire in her eyes. You're my friend. He didn't say anything. How could he? Because, a blonde teen spoke. An honest smile spread across his face. His blue eyes were filled with warmth and care. They gleamed with unshakable faith. You're my friend. Words could kill. Hers had effortlessly butchered his retorts. He never stood a chance. "Get in," he said, surprising her, and after a few moments contemplating of what would happen after this. Things simply wouldn't be the same for him. "What? Get in," Naruto said, opening the door. "I'd much rather talk inside than out here." "What changed your mind?" "Your annoying persistence." Without another word, she strode inside and Naruto sighed. "I'm becoming soft. Just another day. Another day of the same old repetitive tune his life danced to. Every note, every step, every crescendo. Wake up, live, sleep, repeat, until those policemen sorted him into a school. Kuo High lived up to its expectations. Past or present, Naruto Uzumaki still did not appreciate academics despite some of his changes. Over the last 2 years, the blonde learned a great deal about teenagers of this world. They were amusing to watch and observe. Every day was about getting better grades, who was more popular, how one could climb the social ladder and be that someone that stood out from the others. Naruto chuckled a few times at their antics. It reminded him of the academy and the hordes of fangirls that pined, praised, and worshipped a certain brooding Uchiha. It was almost uncanny, especially with that one boy called Yuto Kiba. The other blonde had a rabid fanbase that was sometimes disturbing in his eyes. Naruto pitied him, a bit. He saw a group of girls chasing after 3 boys. It was interesting. The roof always gave him a hawk's eye over the area. While there wasn't any bizarre activity to his knowledge, he still liked being up here. Here they didn't whisper about him in a hush-hush manner. His appearance with the police gave birth to rumors that were just outlandish. Him, the son of a Yakuza gangster who turned against his father to form his own faction. Naruto had to shake his head at that one. Their opinions reminded him of his past, specifically after his fight with Pain. Hypocrisy was humanity's natural reflex. Every single person reeked of it. Konoha's residence's hushed curses, glares and, of course, ignoring his very existence when he was an innocent child was proof of that. The things he did for recognition. He wanted it from all of them. He wanted people to look at him, smile at his childishness, scold him to teach some manners, treat him like they would any other person. Hatred and prejudice instilled a fear in them. When he defeated Pain, he became exalted. The very same people who ignored him, silently cursed him, and wished him ill will sang their songs regarding him. Hypocrisy at its best. Naruto himself was one. He was sure that had he been popular, they would sing about him like one of those flawless role models, as the students labeled them. He didn't want that. Besides, lunches tasted better here. A soothing breeze would caress him, and he got a bit of peace and quiet up here. People his age were quite boisterous and noisy. He was that way too once. Seeing how the sun was moving, the blonde idly checked his watch. There wasn't much time until classes started again. Sighing, he jumped down from the tank and landed softly. He turned around and headed for the door. The sudden creaking of the roof's metal gate was something he didn't expect. Neither was the person who came through. The first thing he noted about this person was, undoubtedly, her eyes. Violet, soft and twinkling with mirth, there was something ethereal about them. Then her face, beautiful and perfect. Her curtain of black, luscious hair tied up in a high ponytail, reached all the way to her knees. Naruto felt a bit proud. She did justice to the color orange with that ribbon of hers. Finally, he noted her figure, and he could easily say that this woman undoubtedly was one of the most well-endowed females he had ever seen. Regardless, it wasn't her face, her eyes, her hair or her figure that gripped his attention. It was her smile, an honest and charming smile that his blue eyes couldn't tear away from. He knew who she was, if only by reputation. Everyone in Kuo Academy did. "Hello, Uzumaki-san." Her voice, regal, silky, alluring and seductive. He understood why men pined for her. They'd be fools not to. But she was just another person in this school. Akeno Himejima, one of the great ladies of Kuo, along with her friend. The redhead, one of the role models he'd thought about earlier, definitely people he wanted to avoid. They were at the top of the social ladder here, even if they were in the same year as him. If they saw him with the Akeno Himejima, he didn't want to imagine the amount of ass-kissers that would line up near him. That said, she was no different from the rest. He would treat her the same as he did to the rest. Go away. His general response to people. If they stayed away, it was better. Naruto started to walk, not particularly eager to start classes. There was a new teacher, Shido. He didn't like him and vice versa. Expecting to reach the gate and head down the stairs, he was surprised when the woman caught up with him. "That's not really the best way to greet someone back, is it?" she asked. The smile was plastered on her face. She stood in front of him, defiantly blocking his path. The woman was stubborn and confident. An annoying combination. "Sorry if I offended you," he tried to douse her flames of interest. "Now, move." The conversation shouldn't have lasted this long. It was supposed to end 5 seconds ago when he told her to leave. Era, her voice was sultry. A smooth, unblemished hand settled on her cheek. "I didn't know you were this rude, Uzumaki-san." She was also overreacting. On purpose, no less. "Now you do," he replied. The blonde didn't like how the woman was dead set on speaking with him. Instead of moving, she hummed with a cute expression. Deep in thought, her eyes intently focused on him. "We'll need to work on those manners, Uzumaki-san. Wouldn't want Shona Kaichu to hear about your edgy behavior. I don't want you getting expelled." "Wouldn't make much of a difference," Naruto replied, looking past her at the door. "Just another student who flunked. But you're not just another student now, are you, Uzumaki-san?" Pinching the bridge of his nose, he decided to feign ignorance. Perhaps mark her pride. "Who are you again?" She blinked innocently. "Once. Twice. You don't know who I am?" "Should I?" A lie. Other than being immensely idolized, she could have been a daughter of one of the many patrons of the school. Or, she was in the cheerleading squad. Yes, he could understand how that increased her popularity. "My bad then," she said, sticking her tongue out in a silly way. "My name is Akeno Himejima. It's to finally meet you, Uzumaki-san." "Can I leave now?" he asked. "Or do you have something else to annoy me with?" "Yes, we're definitely working on your manners the next time," she said, nodding her head and crossing her arms under her impressive chest. Just because he noticed them, perking up didn't mean he was having lecherous thoughts. Those fleshy orbs were huge. Large enough to rival Ba-chan's. Naruto mentally groaned at the comparison. He needed to leave and expel that thought in his head. Jiraiya influenced him far too much. "Goodbye," he said, not bothering to turn around. This was a good way to cut off people and disrespecting them. It made them feel like less and probably disliking him in the process. "See you tomorrow, Uzumaki-san," he heard from behind him. Naruto made a note to not talk with that woman anymore. 1 year he'd been in this school and got through with the least amount of conversations he needed to have. This woman was looking to end his streak. It was pointless. He would, probably, never talk with her again. "You have a cozy place." She looked around like a curious schoolgirl. Eyes were filled with excitement as she inspected his Spartan apartment. His aim to avoid the woman ever since last year was useless, like always. "Can I be a bit blunt, Naruto-kun? You'd say it regardless of my answer." "True," she shrugged her shoulders a bit, completely relaxed. Just as she'd been this morning, and the times before that when she would strike up conversations with him. What he liked doing, hobbies and family. He simply told her he likes to mind his own business. Hobbies included not mixing with people, and family was buried deep into the earth. It was harsh, and she did flinch back then. But he did it to make sure she would take a hint and leave him alone. He failed. "I expected a bit more from your place," she said, still looking around. "At the very least there should have been some game console." "I only need to watch the news," he replied. Naruto had sold his console a few days ago. He needed to come up with a more efficient way to waste his time. Or get a better one. "Okay." She looked at him with an accusing stare. "Though I have to ask, where are your pets?" "Pets? You know. The ones that make you late for school sometimes," she drawled on. "Your fox, cat, beetle, slug, pony, raccoon, and didn't you say you had a monkey once?" "Shukaku, Matabi, Isobu, Son Goku, Kakuo, Seiken, Chome, Gyuki, Kurama. I let them go," he said, looking down, remembering them all. "I thought they were important to you. You did come to class late using those poor little things as excuses." That was actually funny. The tailed beasts were poor little things? "They are important to me," Naruto sighed. "It was time for them to go on without me. To go back into the world and be by themselves. No need for someone like me shackling them. They were never meant to be pets to begin with." Before he could motion for the woman to sit down on the chair, her eyes narrowed down on an object. Something unique, something solid, something orange. Without asking, Akeno paced towards his table and picked up the 6x9 orange-covered book and blushed. A knowing smile cracked. Era, she said, almost giddy at this revelation. I didn't know you were into such exotic books, Naruto-kun. It's complicated, Naruto replied. In all fairness, Icha Tactics was a good read. It helped to distract him, just like Kakashi used it, and the book helped him in more ways than one. Is this why you didn't want to let me in? Akeno asked. To think you immerse yourself in such lewd books. What would? She stopped and Naruto wasn't sure how he felt about this. Her hands put the book back down, and picked up some loose sheets as she intently observed them. For minutes, he didn't say anything. It was pointless. Now he felt something. Shame. Naruto-kun, she said, cheeks flushed. You're the writer of. Sit down, he said pointing at the chair. And leave those. Sure, she said. She happily skipped forward with a grace. Why are you here? He asked a bit seriously, sinking back into the couch. She, thankfully, seemed to pick up on that. Naruto saw a somewhat somber expression on her face. Before he saw that damned look again. The one that showed affection and care. Towards him. I came to see you, Akeno said. Just to see how you were doing. Today's events were pretty heavy. Nothing too heavy, he said. Now that you've seen me and how I am, are you done? Why? He didn't say anything. There was no point. She was far too naive to understand. Most of all, it was better if she didn't get involved. Why do you keep doing this? She asked. If Naruto didn't know any better, he'd say that she was looking depressed. Why did this devil woman care so much for him? He outright treated her like shit, just to make her go away and stop trying to help him. Look, he said, I really don't know what you want. In fact, why in God's name do you bother me so much? He noticed her flinch the moment he mentioned the trickster's name. She rubbed her head a bit before focusing on him. I told you, Akeno spoke, we're friends. I'm supposed to care for you. We're not friends. Do you not see the way I don't want to talk to you? He asked with a tired expression. Why couldn't she understand? I do, Akeno snapped back. A hint of anger present on her face. Every time I come up to you, you run away. Every time I try to get you to open up, you go back into that shell of yours. Why do you keep doing this? You didn't answer my question, he slightly glared at her. Fine, let me tell you then, he heard her say. She leaned closer, I care about you. Naruto closed his eyes. Images and words said by those who were close to him rung and flashed in his mind. A cruel reminder of the people he could never see again. Let me give you some advice. Don't, he said despondently. You don't have care about me. It's not worth it, I'm not worth it. I'll keep treating you like shit. It's who I am. If that's who you were, you wouldn't have bothered letting me in, Akeno's fists clenched. If you found me that repulsive, you would have never bothered bantering back and forth with me. No, he said to himself. I don't care. Not anymore. Look at me, Naruto-kun, she said, pleadingly. Hunching a bit forward, Akeno held his hands in hers, giving him no choice but to see the honesty in her eyes. I don't know what happened to you. But I don't want you staying like this. It's painful. Stop bothering me and get a new hobby then, Naruto replied. There's no need for you share this supposed pawn you keep mentioning. If I don't, who will? No one needs to. I'll be fine. I am fine, he reassured himself. Staying alone clears your mind. Being alone is never a good thing, Akeno said. There was no deceit in her tone. Loneliness never helps you. It keeps carving into you, making you feel like you're worthless. Just waiting for days to pass by and hope that all of this will one day end with you dying. Her hands tightened around his. They were soft and her words, they weren't wrong. He was worthless. He let the days and nights pass by, just living like a hollow shell. And if I let that happen to you, Akeno said, then I wouldn't be much of a friend. You're not my friend, he said, trying to break her resolution. You're nothing to me. After a moment, she, shakily, let go of his hands and stared at the floor. It was a low blow even for him, but at this point he couldn't loathe himself more. Maybe you're right, she spoke after a while. Shifting her gaze back up, he could see the tears well up in the corners of her eyes. She looked vulnerable and torn. Maybe I am nothing to you, but what sort of a person would I be if I couldn't save a single person I care about? He was wrong. Naruto Uzumaki loathed himself more. I'll be leaving, turning around and reaching for something in her bag. A lunchbox, something she handed out to him. Naruto didn't reach for it. After a few more moments, she walked over to his table and placed it there. I made some dinner for you, she said dejectedly. I really thought I would be getting somewhere, but it's going to take a lot of effort. Don't bother. I'm not worth it. You're pretty stubborn, she continued as she sneakily rubbed the tears away. But I will break through that wall. Then, one day you're going to make up for all of it. She stood at the door, entranced in thought. I'll see you tomorrow at school, Naruto-kun, Akeno smiled. What if I don't attend? He asked. Then I'll just wait here until I see you again, she said. Don't worry, I'll always be here when you need me, Naruto-kun. Good night. And then she stepped out of his apartment. He infused chakra to his ears and heard her steps going further down, and soon enough he was sure that Akeno was gone. Letting out a sigh, his hands running through his blonde locks. Bloody lavender, he thought as her fragrance was still fresh here. Burying himself into the seat of the couch, his dull eyes fell on the box. Be there for me, huh? You shouldn't waste your time on me, silly girl. Give it to someone who cares about you, Akeno. Yet, as much as he tried, he couldn't tear his eyes away from it. They ensnared him. Get a girl who cares about you like me, Databane, a red-haired woman with the widest smile he had ever seen, advised him. If and when you do, make sure to treat her right. Not everyone will care about you like her. He shook his head as he remembered the brief encounter with his mother. How he wished they were alive. He didn't know what it was like. Having parents. What would you want me to do, Ka-chan? Suje, Rias said, witnessing the ending of Hunter x Hunter's Chimera arc. It baffled her to no end. How this anime didn't have a large following was almost insulting. Using a few tissues to dry her tears and wipe her nose, the crimson-haired beauty couldn't help but feel terrible. Sure, the good guys won, but she felt bad. Poor Kamugi. She sobbed a bit more, immersed in the rich character she admired. Finally turning the laptop off, Rias prepared to go to bed, but her mind wandered off to her guilty. More towards how some great deconstruction shows were being ignored for other useless fan service shows. Then again, the definition of good anime was changing. It was all about that eki now. Beautiful girls, jiggling boobs, and cute butts. Netarare, harems, power wanks. And of course, the Oni-chan ones. Rias would have despised them if it weren't for the fact that those bimbos had a figure that was similar to hers. She often wondered what it would be like to be in an anime or manga. To be a helpless princess waiting for her true love to save her from all the evil in the world. An adventure where she could slowly discover who she really was when she would gain experiences from it. The Gremory heiress couldn't help but sigh dreamily at the thought. Perhaps she was a bit too girly, but she was who she was. Rias Gremory, a girl who was a devil, an heiress and a user of the famed power of destruction. But she also liked to watch anime, go to conventions and spend her time daydreaming every once in a while. Thinking about a pseudo-fairy tale life made her mind drift to Akeno. Her friend was so infatuated with one Naruto Uzumaki, it boggled her to no end. What was it about him that made Akeno be so magnetically drawn towards him? How did someone like him not show up on her radar? He was a sneaky one, the misanthropist. Deciding to move her mind away from the man who'd terrified her last night, she pondered on her choices. Until she felt a devilish presence. A magic circle formed in her room. The symbol of the Gremory clan glowed its usual crimson red, like her hair, and out of it stepped her queen, her best friend, her confidant. Akeno looked outright shaken. Akeno, the Gremory heiress rushed to her friend. What the heck happened? Nothing, she replied, far too quickly. Rias, what is it? Can I? Akeno paused for a moment. Can I stay here for the night? At the end of the day, she was a devil. Not to say she was evil, but being a devil had its own unique set of circumstances, and with her particularly, it was greed. Not in the archaic sense, but rather in the achievement of it. The crimson-haired beauty was planning to go over to Issei's house and stay the night. Maybe get a few kicks out of him waking up in a freaked-out manner just for the sake of it. But it wasn't unnecessary. It would motivate Issei to do better and train harder. She had her own burdens to carry after all, and she needed the power of possible Longinus tier sacred gear within him. If he was trained properly, he could beat Rise or Phoenix. Canceling her marriage to that detestable filth was her top priority, and she would do whatever it took to break free from him. It was childish, but it was her life. Something no one else had the right to decide. But when it came to her peerage, she would not ignore them. No, she would give them as much time as they needed. They were her friends, her second family. Sure, Rias said and stripped down to her bare essentials. Akeno did the same and joined her best friend. Both of them cuddled up against each other. This was nothing new. They were used to sleeping with each other in the same bed for years now. Rias could tell when her friend was crestfallen. Now was a good example of it. Akeno, she said, getting a hum out of her queen. Did something happen? I went to visit Naruto, she said, guiltily. Rias wanted to be angry. She really did. That man was so unnerving to her. She didn't hate him, far from it, she just felt like a child when he would stare at her with those eyes. Like they'd seen all the horrors of the world, and he was about as old as her for Lucifer's sake. Someone her age shouldn't have such a desolate look in his eyes. She only noticed it after Akeno had mentioned it. There was something off about Naruto Uzumaki and it piqued her interest. But not to the point she'd want to be friends with him. Still, Akeno liked him. For her, she could let this go. Akeno, she said, I thought he told us to leave him alone. No, he told you, the lightning user replied. I don't remember him looking at me when he said it. Rias sighed and softly smiled at those words. Akeno's determination was admirable. The amount of faith she had in believing that she could help Uzumaki was nothing less than astonishing. Her queen was strong, but even Rias could tell something did indeed happen. Okay, Akeno, Rias said, now tell me what really happened. I went over to see how he was doing. Said I wanted to talk to him, the black-haired girl relayed. I even made some dinner and took it there. After talking to him, things got a bit heated. Akeno, Rias said worriedly. Don't worry, she replied, a sense of reassurance was present in her voice. It wasn't anything that bad. It's just, it hurts me when I see him denying himself. Of what? Of happiness, she said with a sad tone. Her body quivered and Rias wrapped her arms around her, he's so lost in his own darkness. No matter what I do, he keeps pushing me away. He's worse than I was before I met you. Rias couldn't help but wince at those words. Akeno's childhood was by no means an easy one. Her mother slaughtered by her fallen angel father's enemies. Akeno's own family tried to kill her. The Gremory heiress feared what would happen if she didn't appear that day with her father's bishop. He says he wants to be alone, but I can see it, she said, and Rias finally heard her friend sob after so many years. All because of a human. The pain he's in. I don't want him to be like that. I don't want him to shoulder something like that. Shush, calm down. We'll help him, Akeno, Rias said, trying to soothe her queen. If you need help with anything, let me know. I'll try. I know, Rias, she said a bit more calmly. Thank you. There's no need for that, Akeno, Rias smiled, warmly. That's what friends are for. Yeah, Akeno replied. What would I do without you, Rias? Probably torture some poor souls. That was only 57 times and 3 of them asked for it. Go to sleep, Akeno, the crimson-haired beauty said. Go bother your boyfriend tomorrow. He's not my boyfriend, Akeno said shyly. Satan's lubed pitchfork. Did Akeno just stutter? Akeno, are you alright? Of course I am, Akeno replied. Why do you ask? Did you just stutter? No. Lucifer Morningstar, she said in mock surprise. Someone can make the mighty Akeno nervous. Maybe I'll have to give this Naruto Uzumaki another look. Rias, she said. Do you want pictures of your collection to leak out? You wouldn't, Rias said with fear. I would. I enjoy watching you squirm, her queen said with a wry smile. Thank you. I needed that. I know. Good night, Akeno said, yawning a bit. Clearly the day had taken a mental toll on her and Rias sighed comfortably. She thought about the man Akeno was so deeply infatuated with. Dangerous. Alarming. Also, he was sort of easy on the eyes. Once you got past the whole depressing aura around. Naruto Uzumaki at the moment was interesting. Rias, Akeno's suddenly spoke. Her train of thoughts derailed. Rias couldn't believe what she was thinking. Yeah? Do you feel sleepy? Not at the moment. You? No. Same. Ice cream? Both of them asked. A giggle was heard from both of them. So strong was the understanding and friendship Rias had with Akeno. Akeno got up early. Rias fell asleep much later after their sugary massacre last night. A perk of being a devil was how her body was self-aware. She was fit most of the time and her exercises helped. She was grateful to her king for providing the much-needed soul comfort last night. Naruto's words, they'd almost cut through her. For a moment she did almost believe his words. That she was, indeed, nothing to him. The sadomasochist couldn't even begin to describe the sharp pang she felt when he said those words. A seething pain she had not felt since she was 9, when she lost her mother and her abandoning father had bailed out on her. But in the end, Akeno knew how the mind worked too. A lonely mind at that. Naruto Uzumaki was. He was. She couldn't even begin to term what he was. What was it about him that attracted her to him? Was it his looks? Maybe. He looked amazing with that blonde hair, blue eyes and a physique that emasculated everyone else at their school. Though it wasn't anything too brutish. It was perfect. He was perfect to her at least. Perhaps it was the occasional pain she saw in his eyes that acted like beacon. Maybe it was because he was different. She didn't know what to think anymore. All she knew was that Naruto Uzumaki somehow, someway, wormed his way into her heart. He had taken a place there, and for all the gifts she had received in life, she just couldn't let someone, alone and writhing in self-loathing, suffer like that. So with a newfound determination she made breakfast for Rias, knowing full well her best friend would be a bit late today. Then she proceeded to make 3 bento. One for her king and best friend she so often liked to tease, one for herself and one for, well, she'd have to do something about it if he didn't show up. Maybe give it to Issei. He was new in the peerage, perhaps he could enjoy some of her cooking. It was with these thoughts that she found herself walking along the streets of Kuo. She of course had to go check everything at her old shrine house, and it was on the way to school. She stopped over at the bland-looking 2-storied house. Checking her phone, she went to a website and looked it over. It was a site that kept a track of the best-selling books in Japan. The Icha Icha series with 2 books had been on top for the last 3 years. Their author, the mysterious Gamma Sennin, was an enigma. Nobody knew what he looked like or where he came from. Until last night. Not only did she discover that Naruto read the Icha Icha series, she preferred Volume 2, Violence, more, but was probably the author. Given his reaction, he had to be. The paper she read contained very fine details of a man utterly ravaging a woman. Her moans, her shuddering, her pain, her bliss. It was so vivid it made the reincarnated devil blush. Yet another fact that made her believe that Naruto wasn't just a loner wishing to drown in loneliness. He needed help, he just didn't know it. Akeno stood near his door and knocked it, something she kept up for some time. Over and over and over again. More than 20 minutes. After she was sure he wouldn't answer, she went back to her path and came upon a most unusual sight. There by the lamppost near the comic book store nearly everyone had to cross, stood Naruto Uzumaki. His arms crossed and a blank expression on his face. His eyes were dull and lifeless as ever. Like 2 lost souls drowning in an endless blue ocean. They called out for help, in her opinion. To save him. She could see it. Her heartbeat quickened when he started walking near her. The blonde stood far too close to her and looked down at her. "You're here," she said. Instead of replying, he simply handed her the lunchbox she left. An empty lunchbox. Akeno couldn't stop the smile stretching on her face. "I owe you," he said with no enthusiasm. "Just the lunch and nothing more." "Actually, you don't have to buy me a meal," she said. Opportunities like this didn't come around often. "I have the money." "I said you don't have to buy me a meal at all. I'm not a freeloader." "No, you're not, Naruto-kun," she said with a smile. She felt so giddy. "But there is something else you can do." "I'm going to regret this," he said with a sigh. "What is it?" "I just happened to make lunch for us. Both of us," she said, enjoying the way how he almost groaned. "All you have to do is eat the lunch I made, with me." "Annoying woman," he said and turned around to walk away. She stood there as he walked away. A small pit began to form again. No, she wouldn't let him ignore her like that. She was Akeno Himejima. A proud woman, a sadistic woman who had her way with what she wanted, and right now, she was. "Well, do you want to be late?" His words tore her focus away. He stood there, waiting, for her. "Sorry," she said and walked beside him. She beamed up at him and he almost rolled his eyes at her behavior. Silence stood between them again. Still, it was nice. Being with him. It soothed her. "I wasn't kidding about what I said," he said. "You don't have to concern yourself with me." "I know," she said. "I don't have to. But, I want to." Akeno Himejima meant those words, and just for a moment, the Queen of Rias Gremory swore she saw his lips twitch upwards. He hunched over the desk, resting against his arms, a makeshift pillow. The blonde's back rose and fell with each breath. They were like whispers to her. His face looked so content at the moment. The dark expression that marred it was gone. While he had narrow jawline, his face would look beautiful on a woman, and those faint whisker-like marks that rested on his cheeks piqued her curiosity. How the girls of this school didn't notice him was astounding to her. He looked so much better this way. It was strange watching him in such a manner, but Akeno only got a few chances to see his face this comfy. Usually, he would be resting face first against those muscled arms of his. Judging by what she saw last night, he was toned if the t-shirt he wore last night gave any hints. For the second time today, Naruto Uzumaki fell asleep again. In Shido's class, no less. Their teacher, a sly crooked man with a slender build and menacing glasses, cursed the blonde with all his hatred. Instead of usually screaming at the blonde misanthropist, the bespectacled, slender man chose to ignore him. According to Shido, those who fell asleep in class could afford to make up for it, and he expressly forbade anyone from helping the blonde in his lessons. Her included. While the man was right, nobody liked him either. Shido was vain, prideful and arrogant. He was also an apparent lecher if the science she picked up was right. Akeno would follow suit as a certain blonde and ignore everything he said. Sadly, her time to watch the blonde lost in the realms of hypnose had to end. As she got up, yells of joy and excitement exploded around her. Eyes viewed her with admiration, praises left their mouths and some even bowed down, willing to lay down their lives for her on a single command. Akeno looked towards her hordes of worshippers and gave them a small smile. Ah, so many of them squealed at such a simple action. To them, her act was that of a god raining down blessings upon them. It was amusing, watching these teens become satisfied. If she had a normal life, one that wasn't flayed by treachery and abandonment, she too would have been like them. Perhaps not as enthusiastic, but she would be more normal. Regardless, classes were over for the day and she walked towards her target. Normally, she'd wait for them to leave, but today she was a bit agitated. Annoyed too. Their lunch meeting had gone wrong. So very, very wrong. She spent a considerate amount of time to make it, and then the blonde had the gall to simply say, it was okay. When she asked about dinner, he replied, I didn't feel like cooking. The nerve on him. Akeno understood something very clearly. While she would be careful given how Naruto reacts to socializing, or his attempts to escape it, she couldn't simply take things slow with him. The man was dead set on not speaking about anything at all. But, she was more stubborn than him. There was also that tiny bit about him being a smut writer. Oh, the horrors the blonde would go through if she let loose that the writer of Icha Icha was sitting among them. But, blackmail was a last-ditch effort. Right now, she needed to break him out of that solitary shell. Akeno was sure that he smiled lightly today. Even if only for a moment. Realizing that the eyes of the many were still on her, the Queen of Rias peerage decided to make things more interesting. Elegantly reaching for a chair, the Nadeshiko stationed it in front of Naruto's desk and placed her bag on the floor. Cupping her cheeks and resting her elbows against the desk, her face was dangerously close to Naruto Uzumaki's as the blonde slept. He was in a trance, and she decided to test her luck, ignoring all the shouts of disbelief as their idol get near the poisonous Uzumaki. Her hand weighed its way through the air. Akeno's fingers rhythmically moved as if hitting down on the perfect notes on a piano. Her targets, his whiskers. Did he purr? It boggled the reincarnated devil to no end. Almost there, she thought giddily. A maniacal giggle echoed in her mind. Let's see if you. Her hand stopped midway. An iron-like grip circled around her wrist as it began to move away from his face, and she heard a sigh. Naruto opened his eyes, looked at her with an annoyed expression. Don't. Will you purr if I touch them? Groaning at her question, the blonde released her hand and sat up. Naruto's hand was calloused and larger than her own. He looked at her with his usual blank stare, lamented by the slight annoyance he felt. Or his deadfish eyes, as Akeno took to calling it. Any particular reason you're bothering me again? Yes, Akeno said, tilting her head. Bucko asked me to bring you over to the orc. Not everyone sees the real you. Oh joy, Naruto replied. The blonde raised an eyebrow at her. Wait, be you who? Bucko. Gremory? The queen nodded her head, furrowing her eyebrows. I thought I told them to leave me alone. You did, the black-haired beauty replied. Akeno didn't appreciate the hostile manner the blonde regarded her best friend and king with. I thought it would be better if you actually met her. Talked to her and the rest of the members. Maybe that would clear some of your confusions. Why? He asked, slicking his untamed hair back. It proceeded to do just the opposite, and she heard the blonde click his tongue. Is she looking to make a deal or something? If so, tell her I'm not buying whatever the devil's selling. Naruto-kun, Akeno spoke with a serious tone. She's not as bad as you make her out to be. You just met her under the wrong circumstances. Rias a nice person, and I'm a horrible person, he interjected. Naruto was stubborn and in denial, refusing to even think that Rias wasn't as selfish as she seemed out to be. I have to open up shop. Today's Tuesday, she said, huffing with pride. You open up the store near dusk on Tuesdays. How long have you been stalking me? Long enough, she said. I have some other things to do. Maybe some other time. It's just one visit. What could go wrong? She reasoned, and the blonde looked at her for some time before shaking his head. This is going to bite me in the ass later. So you're coming with me? Akeno saw him nod, painfully. She couldn't help but smile and put a hand on her cheek. It looks like my charms are finally melting that icy heart of yours. If I didn't say yes, you'd be annoying about it all day, woman. Woman, it's what he called her. Mostly when Naruto spoke to her it would involve short answers. Come to think of it, he never called her by her name. Always woman, rep, Himejima, sometimes, or just, you. A charmer, the blonde was. Very well then, she said, and both of them got up with Naruto packing his unopened book. He looked back to see all her worshippers, their eyes threatening to bulge out of their sockets. Some had traumatic flashbacks, a few girls gasped with deathly expressions, and a portion of boys cried in denial. Your fans are disturbing, he said after getting out of the classroom. The blonde looked at all the onlookers in the hallway with slight contempt, from what she could tell. You should see Kiba-kuns, she added with mirth. They're highly dedicated. Are all you know what as beautiful as you and your team? Akeno stopped and her mind was blank. Her violet eyes focused on him and saw he halted his stride. The blonde was obviously waiting for her reply and the fact that she wasn't walking with him. Did you just call me beautiful? She asked. The queen of the Gremory heiress intently observed him, straighten up a bit and look away for a moment. She quickly moved forward to see him squinting his eyes. I say stupid things sometimes. But did you call me beautiful? You and the others, yes. So you do look at me that way. Akeno smiled wryly as the blonde shook his head. She clapped her hand and spoke with a sultry voice. I can see why you're labeled as Ero-sama Gamma Senin. All the ladies must love that cold, brooding look and charming words. I am already regretting this. Akeno hummed in deep thought. An important question popped up in her mind. How do you get your inspiration, Naruto-kun? He didn't grace her with a response. Do you ask women to perform those steamy lesbian scenes? So you can capture the moment? She just needed to push it a bit more. The draft I read was quite tasty, she added with a tone that did make him look away from her, opting to stare at the windows instead. Are we feeling shy, Naruto-kun? I'm looking at something more interesting. Akeno, daring to take this moment, stood closer to him and making him stop this time. She looked what was outside and spoke, that's a bird defecating on a boy. Just take me to the damned room. Naruto sighed after a few moments. Era, you look so forward to getting into a room with me, Akeno said, cutely biting her tongue and winking at him. Messing with Naruto Uzumaki was fun. Rias Gremory was confused. She was smiling, but her mind was vexed. The Gremory wasn't sure how to deal with this in any other way. Issei Hyodo wielded a sacred gear, Longinus class, and she had an idea of what it was. Right now the boy had awakened his. Sadly, it resembled a red gauntlet covering his left hand. A green orb was there with two golden spikes protruding backwards. It resembled an ordinary twice critical, a commonly occurring sacred gear. For now. Whoa, her newest servant said in awe as he checked out the gauntlet. This looks awesome. Yes, Issei, the crimson-haired ruined princess replied. A smile forming on her face, the boy blushed at her gesture. It was cute in a way. So this thing can blow up mountains? Not that smart though. Hopefully, he would be once his training got upped. Her knight, Kiba was chuckling at his words and Koneko was being her usual self. Mercilessly devouring pastries as if her life force drew its power from them. Though, the young devil understood that her rook was a bit impressed too, if only lightly. Koneko did refer to the boy as perv, and was yet to call him by his real name. Rias often wondered if her sister-in-law gave some lessons to Koneko when they would go back to the Gremory household during vacations. Stopping that train of thought, she looked at the boy enamored with his sacred gear. Issei, Rias spoke, making him focus on her. I believe that with more training you can evolve your gear. So, I can be stronger than I am right now? He asked, clearly surprised at his own potential. If only he knew what he had. Mortals would kill for the gift he had. Unbelievably so, she assured him and saw his face beam up. He pumped his fists in excitement and made his bold declaration. Awesome. That's one more step closer to becoming the harem king. To each their own, I suppose, she thought as Koneko chose to express her own opinions on his dream. Die, pervert. With 2 simple words, her rook killed his joy and pride as he blanched. Confidence gone, the brown-haired teen was on all fours. It was depressing to watch. His face showed hopelessness and the young king felt sorry for her pawn. There, Kiba consoled the sulking devil. The gentleman of Kuo tried his best to cheer him up. I'm sure Koneko didn't mean it. Kill yourself, the rook added and her pawn cried harder. Words have only as much meaning as we give them. Right, bucko? Kiba said looking to his king for some help. Her knight was trying his best, but sometimes Koneko's words were so savage even Rias was surprised by them. Especially when it came to perverts. Yes, Rias added. She stood near the present members of her peerage present. Koneko can be a bit blunt sometimes. Don't take everything so seriously, Issei. She meant it as a joke. Right, he said and got up. Some of his gusto returning he spoke with conviction, I won't be let down by anything. All the opai in the world, big, small, mid, await for my hands. Why are you still alive? Koneko said looking at him. Her voice, eerily reminding her of a certain blonde who questioned her. I thought I told you to die, trash. Rias and Kiba flinched at the tone, Issei sulked further. Maybe she needed to have a talk with her rook, but first came assignments and the young king coughed a bit to get all of their attention. Moving towards her desk, she placed her hand on a stack of papers. Issei, she started, like any reincarnated devil, you'll have to work your way up. As of now, you're a low-class devil. Work your way through the ranks, get stronger, and earn your promotion to become a mid-class devil. Then eventually if you get the chance to be a high-class devil and get a peerage of your own. But you have to start low, your first mission will be handing out all these flyers. Okay? Hi, bucko, Issei said with vigor. I'll show you that resurrecting me wasn't a waste. Rias had to smile at his dedication and in regards to her plan, she decided to do something else. Keep that spirit up, Issei. Who knows, I might give you a reward for it. Judging by his red-painted, steaming face, she could tell that her choosing to emulate Akeno's charades was successful. Of course she was no Akeno, then again no one was. Her queen was one of a kind. Speaking of Akeno, she convinced the Gremory heiress to let Naruto Uzumaki visit their club. That evoked all sorts of discussion between the two friends. Rias was very much wary of the blonde and to an extent feared him. She didn't like his presence, something about it reeked danger to her. It almost reminded her about another blonde man. Only this one didn't look at her with lust and exhaled arrogance. The redhead heard a click as the door opened. Her queen greeted her with a nod, smiling widely. Too widely. Akeno senpai, Issei said dreamily, drooling a bit. Smiling and bobbing his head around, Rias could clearly see how her pawn's line of vision focused on Akeno's well-endowed chest. Then as Akeno moved further into the room, she turned around and placed her hands on her hips. The door was slowly going back to its original position and get closed. Well, her queen said. Naruto Uzumaki entered the occult research club room, closing the door behind him. He seemed annoyed, and Rias, unconsciously, kept her guard up. The blonde was dangerous. Nostalgia, tension and uneasiness hit her, when his darkened blue eyes gazed at her. They didn't seem so horrific as they did that night. Gremory, he said, no fondness in his voice. Uzumaki-san, she said and looked at the blonde lightly nod his head. Oh right, you haven't been properly introduced. Akeno chirped in and Rias was thankful he looked away from her. She noted how the blonde gave the queen a dry look. We have. All of your members introduced themselves when I attended the meeting. But that was only a formality, Akeno pointed out. This is talking with people because you want to. I want a lot of things. This is not one of them. My Satan, Rias thought. Akeno was right. He is an ass. Those weren't the exact words Akeno said, but it roughly translated to that. Rias of course would never say that out loud. She did have her pride along with many other things. Despite wanting to be herself, she did have to maintain proper decorum. Grafia made sure to drill that into her. She figured they'd gotten off the wrong foot, and this human no doubt saw her for only the devil she was. Just a devil, not a person. Rias was often called soft by many other pillars of the remaining 32. Said she was weak-willed and too kind, even by Gremory standards. She wasn't. She was much more than that. This was one of the tests in her life, and she would overcome this fear. Namely, one Naruto Uzumaki. She's right, Rias said as the blonde looked at her. Have a seat, Uzumaki-san. Seeing him not move made her frown a bit, until Akeno tried to nudge him but he caught her hand without looking. Era, her queen said. Getting so touchy today, Naruto-kun. He freed his hand from hers and Rias saw the sadistic queen pout. The blonde shook his head and sat down on one of the couches. Sitting on the left end of it, he placed his elbow against the armrest. His enclosed fist lightly met his cheek as he looked around with a lazy expression. What did you call me for, Gremory? Rias threw a look of betrayal at her queen who looked sheepish. The king sighed and sat on the couch opposite to him. Issei was still not moving and simply gawked at the blonde. All the other peerage members were looking at him too. Akeno stood beside her and the redhead began. First of all, Rias said, I'd like to begin by introducing myself, properly this time. I'm Rias of the Gremory house, which is a part of the— Are you yawning? Sorry about that, the blonde said. I already know who you are. Rias Gremory. Redhead, part of the Gremory clan. Your queen is the annoying woman. Koneko Tujo, your rook. Yuto Kiba, the glittering knight. Finally we have the red glove-wearing pawn of yours. Issei Hyodo. Did I get that right? Yes, Rias said as she looked at the blonde. I see you remember everything from the meeting. Not everything, Naruto replied. I didn't pay attention in some parts while. You Uzumaki-senpai. The loud shout came from Rias' newest pawn as he pointed his finger at the blonde who raised an eyebrow. The king tensed at her pawn's action as he strode forward. What are you doing here, senpai? Issei asked looking at the blonde with budding interest. Rias didn't remember the teen ever talking to the anomaly before. Do I know you? He replied, bland as Koneko. Even her Nekosho looked at him curiously. It's me Issei. Remember when you saved me from those girls chasing me with their kendo? He declared proudly and Rias became highly intrigued by this. As far as she knew, Naruto Uzumaki never associated with anyone. What? The young king heard the confusion in his voice as he looked at her newest pawn. Could you explain a bit more, Issei-kun? Akeno spoke up. Naruto-kun doesn't like to speak much. He's a bit shy about his feelings. Hi, Akeno-senpai, the boy chirped. It was about a year ago, me and my friends were observing how the training at the kendo club was going. Then they chased after us. I hid in the janitor room when you were passing by. I heard how you didn't say anything when those girls asked you if I was around. I only know you because I saw you getting gutted in the park. Akeno pawned her forehead and Rias stared with wide eyes at the blonde's way of bringing up Issei's death. She felt a bit guilty about recruiting her pawn in such a manner, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Wait, you were there? Issei asked, shocked. When the crow skewered you? Yes, I was, Naruto replied not looking at him. But how? I thought you weren't a devil. Normal humans can't see them. That's what Bucko told me. I'm not a devil, the blonde said, as if that station was beneath him. I'm just a human with some quirks. But you didn't save me or help me, Issei said, a bit sad at how the human chose to ignore him. It wasn't my concern, Naruto said. Besides, you could have run away instead of staring at her. Didn't you see her forming those spears? I was looking at her evil opai, the boy replied and Rias almost laughed at his reply. Kiba chuckled, Akeno giggled, and Koneko frowned, she cracked her knuckles. Rias saw how Naruto's eyes widened and stared at the boy. He finally spoke after apparently absorbing this information. You're one of those hentai fans. Aren't you? No, the boy replied. His lie was clear as day, and Rias saw the blonde shaking his head, very lightly. Then her new pawn became reinvigorated. Besides it's okay, senpai. It turned out well and Bucko brought me back to life. As a devil. The chill in his words were not lost on her. Naruto Uzumaki looked at her. You could have offered him a chance. It didn't come up, sadly. Rias lied with all her might, keeping her face straight. I was engaged with something in the underworld regarding a raiding game. It was a half-lie this time. I want to believe you, Naruto said, his voice bearing down a weight on her. But to be honest, I really don't care. What you do is your business. Then why did you come here, Uzumaki-san? Rias asked. Her mind focused on the blonde's intentions. Because of her, Naruto said, looking at her queen, who smiled at the blonde. She would have annoyed me otherwise. You know me too well, Naruto-kun, Akeno said. She took the seat beside him. Rias noted how the blonde seemed to move a bit away as the reincarnated devil looked at him with an intense gaze. I think you really are changing because of my ways. You mean your constant urge to disturb me? Don't you like it when I'm around? Naruto-senpai, Akeno-senpai together? Issei said with shock in his voice, and Rias could no longer hold that smile back. When? How? Why? Naruto and Akeno. Such a strange pairing in her eyes. You're more worried about that theory of yours instead of the fact that you died? You're right, I did die, Issei said with a solemn yet stern tone. But Bucko was kind enough to bring me back. I owe her a debt, and now, I can finally achieve my dream if I work hard enough. Rias had a victorious smirk on her face as she looked at the blonde, who remained unfazed. Now, the young king felt a bit disappointed. For reasons she couldn't properly explain, she really wanted to throw this in Naruto's face. Yet, he appeared not to care. This dream of yours, Naruto said, his voice softer than before. What is it? Rias wanted to stop him, tried to stop him and keep up his image with the words he previously said. She failed. Naruto's eyes were looking at the teen, as if he was searching for something. Something to respect, a goal he could admire. Ambitions that were, to be the harem king and make a peerage with the most beautiful oppai in the world. Naruto stared at him for some time before turning to look at the redhead. He snorted. Rias felt her cheeks reddening at the embarrassment. Someone cold and sardonic doing that felt much worse. Congratulations, Rias Gremory, Naruto said. The redhead heard the sarcasm clearly. You've gained yourself one hell of an ally. That's rude, Uzumaki-san, Rias said, looking at him with a dash of annoyance. He was looking down on her. He must have been internally laughing. This guy was a sociopath. Damn blonde men and their sneering words. I call it as I see it. You really shouldn't be riding that high horse, Naruto-kun, Akeno said with a teasing manner and looked at him slyly. Or should I say, woman? Akeno opened her mouth and paused. Then she dropped the bomb. Gamma Senin. Rias blinked at those words and looked at the blonde. Then at her queen and back to Naruto. He was mimicking Akeno's previous action. Senin-sama, Issei said, as if a priest had found Jesus. Rias was still thinking about what Akeno just said, and judging by the look on her queen's face, she wasn't lying. Senpai is a pervert too, Koneko added her 2 cents. The blonde for his part looked at the Nekosho with a blank look. I never would have guessed. Surprisingly, her knight spoke up. Rias didn't know that Kiba read the Icha Icha series. She of course read it for research. It was highly recommended. Naruto-senpai is a best-selling author. Look, it's not, Senin-sama, Issei cried out, suddenly bowing before Naruto. Uzumaki and Rias wished she had a camcorder. Revenge in this childish form was more than satisfying for her. I've been searching for you for years. Let me touch your hands. Let me kiss them. You brought such a gift for us mortals. I will neuter you. So, Uzumaki-san. Rias began with a smirk of her own. Akeno's giggled helped. When were you going to tell us that bit about yourself? Seeing Naruto Uzumaki react so normally was strange to her. Though he did look annoyed to the point he would leave, Akeno grabbed him by his sleeve, succeeding this time. As he looked at her, and Rias swore there was a mental conversation going on between them. He sat back down and sighed. The Gremory heiress felt a twitch of jealousy at just how close her queen was to the blonde. Moving away from the thought, she sighed. It was just the devil blood in her that momentarily made her feel that, she assumed. It happened every now and then. But for the moment, she saw how Issei kept up his constant bugging of the blonde, and maybe, just maybe, Rias could gain an ally out of Uzumaki. It was better than being put on guard. Did you have a good time? He kept walking as she followed, bugging him with further questions. That's not a no. It was nearing dusk now, and he had to open up his store. While this version of Ichiraku's wasn't as popular as the one back in his home, there were customers to serve. Mostly that portly man with a small family of 4. Seeing the dying rays of sunlight sink into the horizon, Naruto quickened his pace to get home faster. The sooner he got home the better. Naruto-kun, wait, what? His entire day was bizarre. First he had lunch with her on his secret spot, the roof. It was his personal space. Silence, peace and tranquil. The three things he craved for were there. Away from the hustling and bustling of students, now it had him and Akeno eating lunch. The food was amazing, he admitted to himself but lied to her. It was more than just, okay. Naruto couldn't remember when someone cooked a homemade meal for him, and this woman did it twice. His carefully constructed walls were weaker than he thought. No matter how hard he tried, a part of him, a very small bit, still desired those foolish things. But he was no longer that person. He had seen where that path led, the consequences and, of course, the burden that came with it. How he wished the day would have ended there, but the damned devil woman one-upped him with a small bit of blackmail. Uncaring he was, the blonde didn't want people to know about his status as an erotic writer. Mostly because it would label him as another Jiraiya, garnering him attention or make him gain fans, putting him in the limelight. He was content being a nobody. To have no dreams, no aspirations, no goals. A man without a purpose. A discarded life. A worthless soul. He didn't even know why he was alive. It hurt him every night when he remembered Konoha. His friends. His loved ones. How powerless he was to change anything. How he was truly meant to be alone, just like he was as a child. Naruto had lost so much that he didn't want to experience the pain of loss again. The cold emptiness inside him was still there. It haunted him, reminded him of how he ended up going against his own goals. And yet, are you angry with me? The heart was a selfish thing. Look, Naruto-kun, I'm sorry. I really am. It always wanted things that made them feel better. He was flawed and broken, just like any other person. He wanted things as well. Shut up, Naruto finally spoke, a gut feeling slowly eating away at him. The day had taken a toll on him. The orc members, their quirks, jokes, awkward attempts to chat with him. The feeling of camaraderie they had. A blind faith in each other. He could feel that his initial perception about Gremory may have been wrong. The peerage members had each other to lean on. I'm really sorry, Naruto-kun, her voice was worried. It's not you, he said as the two of them finally reached his building. He looked up at the dying light. The orange sky was being erased by the darkness taking over. It was so fitting and cathartic. Tortuous and unbearable to watch. How does it feel? To lose them? No, I shouldn't have pressured you or. Naruto cut her off. It's not you. It's me. Goodbye. How does it feel to lose everything? Naruto decided to go upstairs first and take a shower. It would help clear his mind. He needed some time alone. At least for now. Naruto-kun, he heard Akeno speak and followed him on the stairs. Are you? I'm fine. He smashed his fist against the ground, shattering his bones, crying and howling as he stood alone. The dark clouds above his head twisted to his pleas. Are you sure? Akeno asked him. Naruto was a bit surprised as she caught on. He was sure that he didn't let out any signs of weaknesses or showed them. He couldn't, not anymore. Yes, he lied to her face. I just need to sort some things out. Then I'll be just fine. His screams echoed throughout the crater. Hot tears fell down on the earth. Blood surrounded him as he begged for all this to be a dream. The menacing roots paid no heed to his plea and began anew. Naruto-kun, if you need anything. Akeno reached forward, holding his hand. It was soft and warm. Just let me know. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? You're still on about that, he said, his voice betraying his cause. I told you before, you don't need to bother yourself, Akeno. Go to someone who cares about you. Like your peerage members. He was pathetic, a hypocrite who lied to himself. Even now. And like I told you before, Naruto-kun, Akeno declared, I care about you. I don't care if you don't want me to. I'll do as I please. Naruto didn't say anything as the woman slowly let go of his hand and made her way down the steps. A conflicted look remained in her violet eyes, riddled with some guilt and sadness too. I'm sorry for dragging you with me. I thought having some friends would help you. Akeno smiled at him, sadly. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto-kun. She began to walk away. Stop her. Further and further, their distance widened. Stop her, you idiot. Akeno. The reincarnated devil stopped and she stared at him. You'll bring lunch tomorrow, right? It was all he could say. Yes, she laughed and beamed up. I'll bring you lunch daily if you want. You need to have a good diet instead of that ramen you have every day. I'll see you then, he said. She waved at him before quickly scurrying away. He sat on the stairs and joined his hands, fiddling his fingers at his apparent weakness. It was too familiar to him. This feeling. He felt something wet drip down his chin and he traced to find the source of where it came from. Naruto's fingers slowly made their way up from his chin, passing his cheeks before stopping near the corner of his eye. It was useless. He'd been shifting for the last 4 hours in bed. All his attempts to fall into that momentary bliss, to roam the endless realms of sleep, resulted in failure. Despite his best efforts, all Naruto did was reminisce. Remembering a past he tried to forget. Images flashed in his mind, most of them included himself laughing like an idiot. A village hidden by forests, a mountain with carved faces, and the people he knew. A distant memory. He tried to emulate those feelings before, much to his own surprise. Perhaps it was his old selfish desire for comfort that drove him to do such a thing. In the end, it backfired on him and Naruto realized how he shamed them all, his loved ones. Memories were vile. Repulsive little brutes, like nagging children at a fair bothering their elders with shattering screams. How he wished he could forget them. To lock them up in a house, forget where the key was, and move on. They reminded him of the things he'd done, the life he'd had, the blood on his hands. Reluctantly, he groaned and sat up. With the graceful movement of a sloth, Naruto sat by the bedside. His hand reached for the nightstand and pulled the top drawer. Grabbing a pack of smokes and a lighter, he read the health disclaimer warning him of the consequences. Ignoring it, he took a cigarette and lit the end. As the tobacco burned, the taste engulfed him. He let it taint his lungs. Warnings be damned. It was satisfying. A healthy distraction considering his unhealthy state of mind. He walked across the wooden floors of his apartment and went to the living room. Sitting down by the table, he thought about the barren state of his apartment. I guess I could redecorate a bit. He tapped the cigarette over the ashtray and rubbed a sore spot on his neck. Need to change the pillows too, mentally adding it to his list of to-dos. But he knew it wasn't the hardened pillow that stole his sleep. Why did he bother to call Akeno that way? Or ask her to make lunch for him in such a pathetic manner? Shaking his head, Naruto focused on finishing his cigarette. It ended quicker than he hoped. Getting up again, he walked near the wall, flipping the switch to illuminate the room. Stupid, he said to himself. There was no need for you to ask her that, especially after the way you treated her. Naruto finished berating himself with a weary smile. His grief was his own to bear. Akeno was getting too close to him for comfort. In all honesty, a part of Naruto appreciated what she did for him. Talking to him, asking how he was doing, he was elated hiding it. Her small actions gave Naruto hope that things would get better. That he would move on. He couldn't. He was pathetic that way. A hypocrite, desiring one thing while doing another to contradict himself. Unpredictable as ever. Normally, he wouldn't be so down. Granted he wasn't social, but he had a life, not exactly a grand one. Writing smut, running his store, watching movies, helping the poor when he got a chance. Naruto had planned for it to go that way until the park incident. The latter events didn't affect him either. Akeno was too nice for her own good. Then came her friends. While Naruto wasn't on the friendliest of terms with Gremory, he didn't hate her. He didn't hate anyone, save one person. Rias was just another person, another girl who attended the same school as him and was a devil. Even that didn't matter much to him. The same went for her peerage. They were people who just happened to be devils. However, they made him remember something he chose to ignore. Bonds. In the end, it always came down to that. A part of him craved for it, even after everything. Sighing, Naruto walked near his bed and reached underneath it. He found the object, a simple scroll. Nothing fancy or endearing, it was as barren as the average ceiling scroll. Unrolling it, his eyes traced the letters forming the matrix. It was perfect. Creating chakra-induced ink was not easy, but the perks outweighed the costs. Pervy Sage was right about Fuinjutsu being useful in the most unusual times. Biting his thumb, Naruto drew out blood and traced it across the letters. A puff of smoke emerged, and in the center laid an item, a simple blue album book. Sitting down on the floor, Naruto opened it. Despite knowing how wrong and disrespectful it was, Naruto needed some comfort right now. Even if it was for a few fleeting moments. Rias Gremory glared at the letter. She finished reading it thrice. Each time she held herself back from shredding it. The scarlet sigil of Gremory was on the top, her parents' signatures at the bottom. The rich ink mocked her. Their consent made it worse. It was betrayal in her eyes. Why couldn't she be at peace? Why was her freedom at stake? Didn't she get to choose? Fate grew tired of her rant as Rias heard someone knock. Closing the letter, she opened her top drawer and placed it inside. Fixing her disheveled hair which she had clawed at, from frustration and anger, Rias got up. She hoped it was Akeno who knocked, some good advice would be appreciated. Her queen had gone to Sona regarding the stray reports. Opening the door, she found none other than Naruto Uzumaki standing there. Uncaring as ever, he looked at her with indifference and boredom. Gremory, he greeted, she furrowed her eyebrows. Uzumaki-san, Rias welcomed him inside. His mere presence was simply unwelcome at the moment. She didn't hate him, she didn't think she did. Rias was at odds with the anomaly. He was strong and talented at manipulation from what she guessed. The heiress figured he must have had a sacred gear that, somehow, hid his presence and the aura of his magic. It could explain why. You're staring at me, Naruto said, and Rias blinked. Slowly, she realized she had been staring at him during her analysis. Her face turned a bit red. Recovering, she replied, sorry about that, I was thinking about something else. You're not planning to have me killed, are you? Rias took it all back. She knew exactly how she felt about Naruto Uzumaki. He was a jerk, an asshole who kept bringing up that one terrible thing she did in her life. Rias was human too, well, a devil but a civil one. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and anybody else in her place would have done the same. Uzumaki-san, Rias began, frowning. I would appreciate it if you were a bit less antagonizing towards me. You would, wouldn't you? Rias bit back the desire to destroy him. But she couldn't. Akeno liked him and she wasn't sure if she could. Rias had enough experience and certified knowledge to know what love was. If you're here for just that, then you can leave, Rias said, her usual tone replaced with a cold one. Instead of expecting him to walk away, Naruto sighed. Fine, I'm sorry. Excuse me, she muttered, not believing what she heard. What, did you just apologize to me? Yes. Are you feeling okay, Uzumaki-san? Rias' eyes widened when she saw his lips twitch upwards for a moment. I'm fine. I see. Rias wasn't sure what else she could say. But she had to start with something. So, why exactly are you here, Uzumaki-san? I came to meet Akeno. Rias heard him refer to her queen by her first name. It seemed Akeno made some progress. What for? She asked. Rias was overprotective at times. She would, gladly, give up her life if it meant the safety of her peerage and family members. Granted, Issei's case was questionable, but had she seen he was dying for no reason, in her territory no less, she would have resurrected him. Sacred gear user or not. Well, his voice broke Rias out of her thoughts. Akeno said she'd make lunch and she's a good cook. That was unarguably true, but them having lunch again was a surprise. Well, Rias fumbled in her mind on what she should do. Staving off her fear and thinking with a calm mind, she began, I suppose you can wait inside. Though it may take a while. How long is a while? Naruto asked her, his tone a bit somber. 15 minutes, give or take. Rias opened the door, motioning for the blonde to enter. You can wait here. The crimson-haired girl nearly frowned when he didn't mutter a cordial, thank you, to her, and stepped into her base of operations. It may have sounded weird, but she did call the orc room that. Blame the universal century timeline for making her bring up this name. The blonde walked, and, again, she noticed how he made no noise. It was so cool in her mind, yet it made her feel fearful at the same time. The blonde was aloof, but not careless. He didn't put up a guard, yet wasn't unprepared. Naruto probably had a kunai on him. Maybe Rias could find out where he obtained such an item. It wasn't like Naruto was a ninja or something. Rias sat down and poured herself a cup of tea. The aroma was excellent. Before she took a sip, a thought crossed her mind. She couldn't forget common courtesy. Would you like some tea, Uzumaki-san? Rias asked as she sat on the single couch. The blonde looked at her and shook his head. No, that was expected. Thank you. This wasn't. Are you sure you're okay, Uzumaki-san? She asked, genuinely worried if the misanthropist was under a spell or a curse. Naruto sighing and rubbing his temples didn't seem like a good sign. Yes, Naruto looked at her, his eyes boring into her own cyan orbs. I'm completely fine. Taking his words as a sign he didn't want to talk, Rias took to finishing her tea and focused on passing the 15 minutes without trying to lose it. Rias groaned as she placed the teacup on the table and looked at her guest with a scrutinizing look. He didn't say a word and ignored her like she wanted, yet it got to her. The silence was unbearable to her at least. Damn, the letter got to her. And now, another source of something annoying sat in front of her. How can you just stay quiet like that? She asked, frustrated at how he was ignoring her. While Rias didn't plan to talk to him, his motionless posture freaked her out. Like he was waiting to assassinate her or something. Why couldn't he be normal? By not talking, Naruto replied, he wasn't even looking at her. Besides, I was under the impression you could barely stand the sight of me. That's not true, Rias defended herself. I just think you're a weird emo with lots of issues. This time he did look at her as he blinked. Innocently, might she add. Naruto looked at her, letting out a, huh, he scratched his chin. Well, at least you didn't lie, he muttered, typing something into his cell phone. So, Rias began trying to break some ice. Since they weren't enemies, they might as well fraternize a bit as Naruto would be having lunch with her queen. She needed to make sure this guy didn't plan anything dirty. You're the author of Icha Icha. Immediately, she noticed how he stopped typing and sighed. Pocketing the phone, Naruto looked at her, seriously, as he spoke. I do it for the money. I never really saw it coming, to be honest, Rias added. Noticing his deadpan stare, she explained further, I mean, you're the Naruto Uzumaki after all. Misanthropist and all that, is that what they call me now? He asked. The Gremory heiress noted how he seemed a bit interested. Among other things, Rias said. Though accomplished smut writer was something I didn't think you'd be. You read it, didn't you? Once. He stared at her. Okay, a few times. Naruto wasn't looking away. Akeno made me do it. I see. And I didn't peg you, Akeno, and your group for devils. He quipped back and looked at her with utter boredom. It does make a little sense now. What makes sense? Rias asked, her curiosity rendered insatiable at his words. She and all the devils did do their best to hide their presence as much as they could. Well, Naruto paused, making the crimson-haired girl sit on the edge. I suppose some of you did come off as too perfect. Huh? The confusion in the devil increased? Perfect? How? Nothing but good stuff about you all, always being the measuring stick, too flawless to be human. The blonde was focused on his phone, again. So you suspected us from then? Especially after Akeno started hanging out with you? I didn't bother to, he clarified. I saw a few fallen before, and I did my best to avoid them. It wasn't my concern. That said, I never pegged non-humans going to school. Rias nodded. Naruto wasn't lying from what she could tell. Granted, she wasn't some war veteran practiced in the art of interrogation, but the Gremory liked to think she was smart enough. She was the current Lucifer's sister after all. Now that you know, what do you think of us? Other than you looking at me like an elaborate schemer. Rias saw him sigh again. Must be his thing. The girl wanted to know his opinion. Rarely did the Uzumaki talk, from what she learned. To be honest, Naruto paused, leaning back into the couch. You, Akeno, and the others being devils or humans doesn't change anything, well, not much anyway. Since discovering the room where Searsex kept her pictures from her birth to the present day, Rias became speechless. It didn't make any sense. She was a devil, a high-class devil and heiress to the Gremory house. Unless her adorably cute nephew Milikas became heir. And this knowledge of her being a supernatural being didn't faze him at all? Excuse me? Rias gawked. What do you mean it doesn't change anything? It means I don't care, he replied. Akeno is still the girl who annoys me, with stalking on the side. Your devil friends are students of this place. And you're Rias Gremory, the redhead. Naruto finished and closed his eyes, yawning. Rias stared at him and took note of his blunt words. He viewed her as Rias, the redhead? Was her hair a beacon? It was in the underworld. The devil pouted, knowing he wasn't looking at her. She owned half this town, damn it. Naruto Uzumaki was a thorn as ever, and didn't look at her in a special way like everyone else. To him she was just another teenager and… Wait, she thought and shook her head. She coughed into her hand, and when he didn't look, Rias repeated her action. Still no response. Uzumaki-san, the devil spoke and Naruto opened his eyes. What do you mean by redhead? Stop trying to delve into things, he replied. You're a redhead and that's it. Your hair was the reason I even remembered your name. Is it too flashy and rough to look at? No, it's too beautiful, Naruto said and immediately groaned. Forget that last part. But she couldn't. Rias wasn't innocent. She had tasteful content that proved otherwise. The first thing guys noticed about her would be her chest. Then her face, her ass, her hips, and so on. Her hair was the last thing she expected someone, a guy like Naruto of all people, to find beautiful. On top of that, he was treating her like a normal person. Get a hold of yourself, Rias, she internally screamed, slapping both her cheeks. They were warm and Rias knew her face was garnering the same shade as her hair. He just complimented your hair. Lots of guys have done it before. Except they didn't. Shaking her head, she twirled a strand of her hair. Naruto had closed his eyes and was listening to music with his headphones. When did he do that? Also, how dare he ignore me after shamelessly flirting like that? Getting her mind out of the gutter, Rias tried to stop thinking about it as she stared into the ground hard. You seem frustrated, he stated, and, by magic, his earphones disappeared. He stared at her with those deep blue eyes of his and Lucifer, damn it, Rias thought, cheeks still red. She noted how he would look better if he wasn't so gloomy. His hair was wild and he seemed athletic. I had some problems with paperwork. She saw how his eyes looked at the clock. She began, albeit hesitantly, Uzumaki-san, if you don't mind me asking. What were you doing in the park that night? How is that relevant to anything? I wasn't following you or something. No, that's not what I meant. Rias said, loudly. Embarrassed, she laughed, trying to derail her former action. I mean, were you there by random coincidence or? I was taking a walk. At night? I like to take walks, and it's nice at night. People aren't around, so you get to see a rare view, he said, and Rias looked dumbfounded. I never thought you'd be that sort of a person, Rias said as the blonde looked at her with a raised eyebrow. I mean, I've heard your representative. I've heard many things about devils, none of them included anything about teenage girls having fascination for mecha. How do you know that? She asked. Did he stalk her? Instead, Naruto raised his hand and pointed at the small EVA unit model sitting on her desk. Sorry about that. The door to the room opened and Akeno walked in. Her queen seemed a bit dull, and Rias assumed more strays appeared. However, a smile formed on Akeno's face when her queen noticed Naruto. Genuine happiness. It was so real, Rias wondered if Akeno ever looked at her like that. Gracefully, the sadist moved towards the couch and looked at the blonde. Naruto-kun, I looked for you at the roof and our classroom. You weren't there. Oh, Rias thought. It seemed that Akeno was searching for him. That explains the down look. I thought you'd be here, Naruto said. Ah, her queen's seductive voice reached her ears. You came all the way here, just for me? Rias had to stifle a giggle as she watched Naruto's eyebrow twitch in annoyance. The blonde rose and headed towards the door. I hope the lunch is worth it. Right, bucko, Akeno said, almost trembling with excitement as she handed her king a dossier. This is what Kaichu compiled for you. So all the reports are in it? Yup, Akeno chirped, and Rias, understanding her friend's excitement, nodded. Well, I'll see you after classes end, bucko. Sure, Akeno, Rias replied and saw Naruto outside the threshold, idly walking away. Impulsively, Rias stood up and spoke loudly enough, Goodbye, Uzumaki-san. He didn't reply or turn back, but waved his hand. Akeno's giggle took Rias' attention. Oh my, her queen muttered as she picked up the 2 boxes on the cupboard. You and Naruto-kun must have bonded quite a lot. I wouldn't say bonding, but we did talk. And? He wasn't being a jerk, and apologized for being one if that means something. Trust me, bucko, Akeno said. It definitely means something. With those words, her queen left with a quick pace. Rias closed the door, happy for her queen's attempts working, and felt glad that someone viewed her as a normal person. Even if it was a borderline delinquent. As she passed by the mirror, she looked at herself. Her hair was still everywhere despite the quick fix. She had a lot on her plate, and it was starting to seep into her personal life and her fun time. It will be okay soon, Rias thought as she reached for the comb. Brushing down her long curtain of hair, she thought about what the misanthropist said. Beautiful hair, huh? How was it? Omurice was something she cooked many a times. Akeno did it before, and could seamlessly pull it off any other day. She was a torturer well versed in the art of sadism, but she was a better cook and a proud one. The black-haired girl was nervous because Naruto asked her to make lunch. When he said those words last night, Akeno felt a burden being taken off her shoulders. She could tell that Naruto was conflicted ever since he left the orc room. His eyes darkened, they were in pain. Now, she was sure that Naruto had suffered from something in his life. In fact, Akeno feared that her closeness with him had weakened. Instead, something good came out of it. His small act meant so much to her. He never, willingly, engaged into conversations, and from what Rias said, he did talk. Which was a lot if Naruto's less than acceptable social life was something to hold as an example. Taking that as incentive, Akeno poured all her effort into making omurice. The pan-fried rice was perfect along with the right amount of ketchup and chicken, which she placed into a thin omelette sheet. She added tomatoes as a compliment. It should be perfect, and she waited for the critique. Ever since he started eating, he hadn't said a word. He finished it rather quickly too, and Naruto used a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Drinking some water from the bottle he carried, the blonde let out a content sigh. It was good. Akeno felt glad, but expected a bit more. All the adrenaline lost, Akeno's smile had all but vanished. Thank you. Her eyes widened at the two words. Akeno faced the blonde beside her, who smiled. Was it a smile? She didn't know. The hybrid realized this was the first time she saw him smile. It was really good. Akeno's heart fluttered. Then, the smile faded as the monotonous expression returned with a boring vengeance. He looked up to the sky and the black-haired girl unknowingly gulped a bit. She wasn't sure what to do. Naruto Uzumaki thanked her. She was no fangirl, nor did she let out the feeling she was shy. The latter was Rias, but Akeno didn't know what to think. This was the first time she was speechless, ever since discovering her mother's closet filled with endless BDSM gear. But Akeno wouldn't mind seeing that smile again. Unknown to the sadist, her own face was adorning one, and Naruto chose that exact moment to look at her. Your cheeks are red, he said, and Akeno coughed a bit. She didn't know her face could turn that red. It's nothing, I think I have a fever, she said, and Naruto hummed. You're not feeling too bad, are you? Holding back a small urge to shout in joy, she shook her head as he nodded. Are you worried about me? I don't have to be. I guess you're pretty strong. That's true, Akeno said, glad the conversation sided to something else. Letting her usual habits take over, she continued, and when my enemies cross my path, I like to crush them. Break them down, hopelessly show them the abyss. Make them feel despair and, you're a sadist, aren't you? Akeno stopped immediately and smiled. Naruto was looking at her with a deadpan stare. Well, at least you have some flaws. Oh my, Akeno said. You might want to be careful, Naruto-kun, otherwise I may have to teach you some manners. I'm not letting you enter my house again, he said after taking a pause and nearly got up, before Akeno reached out and caught his wrist. She tugged on it, twice. I was just kidding. I want to believe you, he said. But masochists and sadists are crazy by nature. Not true, however, we are honest, Akeno quipped and smiled. There's still some time left, Naruto-kun. Please sit down with me. He didn't reply and stared at her for a while before shrugging. Sitting down beside her once more, Naruto rested his cheek against his palm. Can I ask you something, Naruto-kun? Akeno looked at him as he sighed. This was an important question. You never hesitated before. What do you do when you're not at school? I think you've stalked me enough to know exactly what I do. Akeno laughed at that. It was true. She had seen him stroll down to the comic book store, giving out food to the homeless. I know, but hearing it from you makes it better. I honestly can't figure you out. Naruto yawned a bit. Akeno could tell he was sleepy, again. It wasn't a normal day at Kuo if the blonde didn't sleep in at least one of the classes. But it was only now she noticed how bloodshot his eyes were. Your eyes, she said, reaching forward, but his hand caught hers. Despite the calloused palms, his hand was warm. The latter was something she didn't expect given his nature. But it wasn't unwelcome. I didn't get much sleep, he said and, slowly, let go of her hand. For a second, Akeno thought she saw a tattoo on his wrist, but chalked it up as imagination getting the better of her. You never really answered me. Akeno cupped both of her cheeks as she stared at him, her entire attention pinned on him. I do what everybody else does. Eat, sleep. That's not what I meant, Akeno cut him off. I meant hobbies or something you do for fun. I feel like we're talking too much nowadays. Naruto looked away from her. Maybe you should go back to ignoring me. My life was a bit better when you didn't annoy me. Akeno clenched her fist as she remembered that time. While she had no obligation to meet him nor did he ask her to, it was a time she wasn't fond of. That was cheap on his part, just like that time when he called her nothing. Yet here she was, refusing to leave his side. Get used to it, Naruto-kun, she said haughtily. One of these days you're going to apologize to me. Deciding to be bolder and mess with the blonde, she leaned against him. The queen rested her head against his shoulder. For a second Naruto almost froze. Akeno smiled at that. Looping her arm through his, she clung tightly. She could feel him trying to move. Don't, she said. There's only a few minutes left. It wouldn't kill you. For a moment he didn't say anything and chose to remain stiff, before finally she felt Naruto's posture slacken a bit. They stayed that way as Akeno let out a sigh of contentment. This feels nice, doesn't it? Akeno waited for a reply but she settled for the silence. Why are you doing this? She heard him ask. His voice sounded lighter. Because, Akeno smiled as leaned, more, against him. It's what I want. I don't think most friends do this, Naruto said, a bit of uneasiness in his voice. Most people don't call their friends. Nothing, Akeno said the last word trying to imitate his voice. Touché. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, Akeno said, closing her eyes. You're going to make up for all the times you were being a jerk. Otherwise, I may have to punish you. You're weird. The sadist giggled, enjoying the moment too much to register how the blonde rolled his eyes. Torture. The word came to his mind. Akeno Himejima was torture incarnate. Naruto had done his best to avoid people. A part of the former Jinchuriki knew that no matter what happened, people never truly changed who they were. The core remained the same. With some effort it was possible sometimes. That said, he was still afraid. Fearful of bonds, the weight that came with them and the utter horror of losing them. In a year and a half, Akeno had been chipping at his walls. The last 4 months were better since she ignored him for God knows what reason, but even he knew the truth. He was afraid of Akeno, or rather, it was her affection he feared. When the Queen of Rias Gremory had stopped talking to him, a part of him, as much as he tried to deny it, missed her. Naruto didn't think about her all the time, but sometimes he wished she would bother him. He wanted the woman to visit his ramen store, again, and talk to him while served the other ramen lovers. Then, Akeno introduced him to Rias and her peerage, who were colorful to say the least. He even blurted out that Rias had beautiful hair, which was true, but he had no intention of saying that out loud. Her crimson locks were something which caught his eye a few times and he blamed his father for making him inherit the same fetish. It was with these thoughts Naruto kept walking and got closer to his home. He bumped into someone and before Naruto knew it, the man muttered something about filth on his clothes. The green-haired, lanky man walked away and the blonde had half a mind to stop him. Venting out anger helped, like cigarettes. Uzumaki-san. A cheerful, jovial voice reached Naruto's ears and the blonde bit back a sigh. I've been doing that a lot recently. Turning around, Naruto saw a fat man approaching him. The man wore a suit and was sweating bullets, his breathing erratic, and his black hair slicked back. Glutton, Naruto said calmly. I see you haven't choked on your own breath yet. Funny as ever, Uzumaki-san. The man laughed and wiped the sweat off his brow. I didn't think I'd be meeting you outside of Ichiraku's. Neither did I apparently, I'm unlucky. Naruto didn't even try to hide the amount of annoyance he felt right now. You are lucky, Uzumaki-san. People associated with me have the devil's luck, he shouted and Naruto shook his head. The man Naruto became annoyed with was Yashira Nanakase. His #1 customer at Ichiraku's and was a freak of nature. Naruto couldn't believe how this man consumed more ramen than him. The noodle enthusiast in Naruto became disgusted at his gluttony and chose to call the man glutton. Nanakase didn't mind. Any particular reason you're bothering me in the middle of the day? Naruto asked. Right, the portly man said. Bringing up both of his thumbs up, the man smiled, I got a promotion. Congratulations, Naruto didn't even bother to look at him. Now move, Uzumaki-san. I thought you'd be a bit happy, Yashira spoke, dejectedly. Naruto rolled his eyes as he tapped the man's shoulders. Just keep my business running and I'll be happy enough. Hell, I'll even throw in a few extra eggs every now and then. Naruto began to walk away as he heard the man shout something. The blonde had larger food for thought and he was already near his home. Footfalls resounded as he walked up the stairs and brought out a key from his pocket. Sliding it in, he unlocked the door and stepped in. I'm home, Naruto said as he closed the door and locked it. The blonde began to take off his shoes, today's events still fresh on his mind in his 2 unusual meetings. Then a voice reached his ears. "Welcome home, Naruto." "Reiner, I don't understand why we're just staying low." The fallen angel scowled at the tone. Donasek always had been rowdy. His lust for battle matched only by his anger. Currently the fedora-wearing fallen was gritting his teeth. "I told you before," Reiner said. "We don't attack Gremory or Citri. Doing that will bring in too much heat." "You were attacked, Reiner, Calawarner," a blue-haired fallen spoke. "Granted we are on enemy territory, but you don't just expect us to let the guy who roughed you up to just let this go." Formerly known as Yuma, she appreciated Kala's words. They were genuine and heartfelt, but the truth was Reiner didn't want anyone from her troop meeting him. She still remembered his words, his promise. His oath of destruction should she cross him. "I know," Reiner said. She looked at them, her amethyst eyes boring into them all. "But I need all of you to listen to me. You're no match for him, for the man who beat me. I've never even seen him around the devils. On top of that he's strong. Too strong. Maybe he just caught you off guard," Ray middled reasoned. The short, sadistic blonde of Reiner's group said with a disturbing smile. "When I find him, I'll pay him back tenfold." Reiner looked at the 3. Donasek, Calawarner, middled. Her friends. Her closest friends, and despite the rumors of fallen angels being bloodthirsty demons as they learned since they were young, Reiner couldn't help but adore most of her siblings. Even now, the female fallen was sure that if Gabriel appeared she wouldn't be able to fight the Seraph. Not because of the difference in strength, but rather because Reiner truly loved Gabriel like a sister. The same went for Metatron and his habits. Michael, Uriel and Raphael, however, Reiner didn't know what to think about them. But each time they crossed her mind anger rose in her. Surely the Archangel could have been more lenient. Show mercy and take her back into the rankings of heaven. Or Yahweh for that matter. Despite never meeting her father, she assumed he cared about her. Was her father too busy to hear her pleads, or did he despise her? She wandered for a long time, wondering if all his promises were empty lies. Those thoughts made her join the Grigori. Azazel accepted them, preaching about peace but never doing anything to achieve it. Ultimately, he didn't give much of a damn and let them reign free. Somewhere along the way Reiner became a cruel individual who enjoyed the misery of others. Humans are and will always be beneath her no matter what. Then Lord Kokabiel arrived. The Kadri-class fallen broke off from the Grigori and formed his own group, Legion. Kokabiel promised her power, victory, and her dream. Reiner, for all the things she'd done, wanted to go back home. She had learned her lessons, and was willing to do anything to get back there. Sacrificing her comrades, however, was not something she would resort to. "Look," Reiner began, still a bit injured from her fight. "I know all of you care about me, and you want to get back at the guy. Let me assure you, don't. But, Reiner, trust me," Reiner pleaded. "If you see a man with blue eyes, blonde hair and strange markings on his cheeks, run. Don't think twice." "Fine," Donasek said with reluctance. "But only until the maiden arrives. After that, it's open season." The man walked out with anger emphasized on each of his footfalls. "Please go and keep him under control." "Fine, but you owe me," Calawarner said looking at Reiner who groaned. "Donnie's pissed. Do you think he'll eat a whole store out today?" Middled said as she followed the blue-haired female. Alone, Reiner stood in the abandoned church. Unlike other houses of God, this wasn't even moved properly and resembled a poor man's home, one not worthy of a second glance. Old Bibles covered with cobwebs and dust, the glass paintings of the Son of God now rotten with dirt and negligence, holy water now stale and worthless. She looked up at the empty cross, glaring at it as she lied down on the altar. God, the Creator, the Lord in heaven, her Father. To Reiner, God was the greatest coward in her eyes. He wasn't even there when she fell, instead hiding somewhere while her brother did the dirty deed. Meanwhile, he was busy showering humans with gifts, blessings and mercy. Reiner remembered praying after falling, begging for redemption, crying out apologies. Even after she joined the Grigori, a small part of her dared to hope that her prayers reached his ears. They didn't. Instead, she saw how sacred gears manifested in humans by the will of God himself. How they shamelessly used the Lord's creations for their own selfish desires as someone worthier than them went unnoticed. God blessed them while ignoring her. The Lord works in mysterious ways, my ass. Rhaenyra thought, her mind lingering on a certain artifact. She would report back to Lord Kokabiel about it after she got her bid done. Rhaenyra was cruel, but not without her sense of right and wrong. The Fallen had no intentions to remain in any more debt. Their unknown associate was sending backup too, some rogue exorcist. Lying on the altar, Rhaenyra stared at the chapel's entrance. Slowly, a cruel thought formed in her mind. "Are you watching, Father?" Rhaenyra thought, a vicious smile on her face, born out of hate and frustration. She hugged herself tightly, making her body lusciously sprawl around. "I hope you are." Vindictively, the Fallen's hand came up to rub one of her ass as the heat inside her increased. It may not mean much, but if this pissed them off it was worth it. Not to mention, Rhaenyra had to vent out her urges by herself. Her fellow Fallen were afraid of her wrath and she would never, ever let a human touch her that way. She slowly slid off her small article, rubbing her slit making it warmer. Rhaenyra imagined what it was like to have her temptation grow beyond control, as some male being with a phallus ruined her on the altar, shaming everything that was pure about this sanctity. Much to her own surprise, a man's image did conjure in her mind. Hair so bright and golden, it reminded her of the angels in heaven. Cold blue eyes, too deep to belong to humans, they burned like ice. The chill in his voice, making her shiver and fear his power, it was something that attracted her since her fall. She moaned and panted as she pictured him, the dirty human bastard who threw her around reminded her of what true strength was. It was shameful, yet she kept on going. Pinching her, the heat increased as the fingers slid in and out. Rhaenyra would make him pay one day, make him apologize and… "Oh," Rhaenyra moaned as she felt the heat increase, the inner walls tightening. Her cries of filled the cathedral, corrupting it with her cries of debauchery as she prayed that God was watching her do this.